thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Kent Hovind. I was a high school science teacher for 15 years. Now, since 1989, I've been traveling around the world doing seminars on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. In tonight's session, we're going to talk about lies in the textbooks. Would you believe the textbooks that we pay to have our kids learn from have things in there that are not true? One of my hobbies for many years has been collecting science textbooks. I have hundreds of them. My wife says I have too many. I say, no, I need a few more, dear. Don't quite have enough. I collect public school textbooks, and I enjoy studying science. And you can ask my kids or my wife, when I get bored, I study science textbooks. I read them. I like studying science. And I think science ought to bring glory to God. But there are some lies in the textbooks that kids are exposed to, and I'm not against science, and I'm not against textbooks. I'm not against schools. I'm not against teachers. I'm against lies. And I think if we took the lies out of the books, they'd be fine. And we're going to share with you some of the things in the textbooks used in your town that are not true, and tell you what you can do about it, how to fix the problem. But you know, it's always amazed me, in my 15 years of teaching science, and now 12 years traveling preaching on creation and evolution, it has always amazed me how two people can look at the same thing and come to opposite conclusions of what they are seeing. Two people can look at Grand Canyon. They're both looking at the same canyon. One of them believes in evolution, so he stands there and says, wow, look what the Colorado River did for millions and millions of years. The Bible-believing Christian stands there, looks at the same canyon, and says, wow, look what the flood did in about 30 minutes. Now, how was that canyon formed, huh? The textbook says, over millions of years, the Colorado River has carved the Grand Canyon from solid rock. Well, now, he didn't see that happen. He doesn't know that it took millions of years. You see, kids, if you're going to succeed in life, you have to learn to distinguish between facts and the interpretation of the facts. Okay? It's a fact Grand Canyon exists. Now, the evolutionists have an interpretation of how it got there, and the creationists have an interpretation. But the fact is, the canyon exists. The interpretation is not part of the fact. The evolutionist says it formed slowly over millions of years. A little bit of water and lots of time. The creationist says, oh no, it took lots of water and a little bit of time. Somebody is wrong, okay? And we're going to show tonight who they are. It is a fact the earth has many layers of sediment. No question. I've been to all 50 states, been to 26 countries, been to the San Andreas Fault, the Hayward Fault, the New Madrid Fault, none of my fault, but I've been there, done that, have the t-shirt, okay? And I taught science for years. I taught earth science. There's no question the earth has layers. The question is, how did they get there? See, the evolutionist says the layers form slowly, and each one represents a different age of millions of years difference in time. The creationist says, oh no, they all formed quickly during the flood. Is there any way to prove which interpretation is correct? Now, the evolutionists in the textbooks are constantly trying to erase the line between the fact column and their interpretation column. And they would like you to believe that their interpretation is also part of the fact. And that just simply is not true. Like this textbook author, he says, the Colorado River has cut through layer upon layer of rock over millions of years. Well, now, hold on a minute. Does he know that, or does he think that? He thinks that. He certainly doesn't know that, does he? It's a fact. If you built a dam across Grand Canyon, a huge lake would form behind it. I mean, a big one. This snow line here kind of tells an interesting story. Between these two red lines is the white stuff called snow. That is indicating the elevation of this Kaibab uplift. See, Grand Canyon is a breach right across a dam called the Kaibab Uplift. The elevation between those two red lines averages between 6,900 and 8,500 feet above sea level. Grand Canyon cuts across a ridge, not a mountain. It's like if you took a piece of carpeting and pushed it up into the wall, it would make a wrinkle all the way across the room. That's called a ridge, okay? Kaibab Uplift is a ridge. Now, the river enters the canyon at the far right there, and it's 2,800 feet above sea level, and the river flows downhill from there. All known rivers flow downhill. At the middle of the canyon, the river is 1,800 feet above sea level. Now, follow me here now. I was in a debate one time, and this professor got kind of upset. He said, oh, Hovind, you're so stupid. Don't you know it took millions of years to make the Grand Canyon? I said, well, sir, now hold on. We need to study this just a little bit. I've been to Grand Canyon a bunch of times, flown over it a whole bunch of times, studied it, done lots of research on this. Did you know the river enters the canyon at 2,800 feet above sea level and flows downhill to the middle of the canyon? And at the same time, the ground is rising uphill. And it gets about 7,000 or 8,000 feet above sea level. The guy said, yeah. I said, okay, well, sir, let's ponder a few points here. Did you know the top of Grand Canyon is higher than the bottom? He said, well, yeah. I said, sir, did you know the river only runs through the bottom? He said, yeah. I said, sir, did you know the top is higher than where the river enters the canyon by over 4,000 feet? Rivers don't flow uphill, sir. By the way, there's no delta. Where's the mud that washed out of there? That river did not make that canyon. The flood made Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is very obviously a breached dam. It is not formed by the Colorado River. In the first place, rivers don't flow uphill. Secondly, if it was flowing uphill, it would have very little erosional power. It just can't possibly be true that the canyon was made slowly over millions of years. It had to be made very rapidly, probably in a couple of weeks or months after the flood when the sediment was still soft. And those sediment layers all formed at the same time. We'll get into that in just a minute. So lie number one that the kids are exposed to in the textbooks, that river did not make that canyon. But Grand Canyon is used as an icon, as evidence that the earth is millions of years old. It always comes up. How old is the earth? Oh, millions of years. Well, how do you know? They'll say, well, take a look at Grand Canyon. And actually, Grand Canyon is proof of a flood. I'll give you another example of how it is possible for two people to look at the same thing and come to opposite conclusions of what they're seeing. Are there any farmers or veterinarians in the crowd that might happen to know what this machine is right here? Who knows what that machine is? Anybody? Yes, sir. What is that? That's a calf puller. That is correct. That's a what? A calf puller. You see, once in a while, a cow has a hard time having that baby calf. And so to get the calf puller out, hook the cable around the calf's legs and jack the calf out of the cow. You get a few tons of pressure on there, calf comes right out, no problem. One day, this farmer was out pulling a calf because it was a breech birth. The back feet were coming out first. So the farmer had the calf puller wrapped around the calf's back legs, and he's trying to pull the calf out, and a city fella stopped his car to see what on earth is going on. And the farmer said, come here, man, I need some help. The city fella said, I don't know nothing about cows. He said, just come give me a hand, would you? He said, okay. So the city fella hopped out of the car, jumped the fence, and ran over to help the farmer pull the calf. He never said a word. He just did what he was told. Well, about 10 minutes later, they're walking up to the barn, going to get washed up. The farmer said, man, I want to thank you for helping me. The city fellow said, oh, I was glad to help, glad to help. The farmer said, have you ever seen anything like this before? The city fellow said, man, I've never seen nothing like this. The farmer said, well, do you have any questions? He said, yes, sir, I got one question. It's been bugging me for 10 minutes. The farmer said, well, what's your question? The city fellow said, how fast do you figure that calf was going when it ran into that cow? No. We're not separating the wreck here, fellas. Two people are looking at the same thing, and one of them is getting the wrong idea of what he's looking at. The Bible warned us that was going to happen. 2 Peter chapter 3 says, knowing this first, there shall come in the last days scoffers. Did you know there are people that scoff at the Bible? I deal with them on a regular basis. I attract them like a magnet. The Bible says the scoffers are going to walk after their own lust. And by the way, the only reason to reject God's Word is because of lust, not because of science. There's no scientific reason to reject this book. But some people don't like this book because it chaps their hide. Well, you better get some Vaseline, man. You're going to need it because we will be judged by this book right here. Okay? Anyway, the Bible says the scoffers are going to say, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were. Now that is an important phrase. The scoffers are going to say, the way things are happening now is the way they've always been happening. Long, slow, gradual processes. The Bible says they are willingly ignorant. Willingly ignorant. In the Greek, that means dumb on purpose. The scoffers are willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens and the earth. We cover all that on videotape number 1 and videotape number 2, of what the original creation was like and why they lived to be 900 years old. But the scoffers are ignorant of how the earth was created. They don't understand what it was like in the beginning. And they're ignorant of the flood, it tells us in 2 Peter 3:5. And we cover a lot more on that on video number 6, about the flood, what caused the flood, where did the water go, why did it happen, some of the theories about that. But one of the scoffers in the last days was a fellow named James Hutton. James Hutton lived in the late 1700s, and he wrote a book claiming the earth is much older than most people think. Now you need to understand, folks, in the late 1700s, most people believed the Bible. But there were many countries that were rebelling against the idea of a king telling them what to do. There were many revolutions going on. We had the American Revolution, the Polish Revolution, the French Revolution, the Spanish Revolution. Many countries were throwing off monarchy and establishing democracy as a form of government. Now, without getting into the, is it good or bad or right or wrong, just the fact is that's what happened, okay? Historically, many countries threw off the king, and the Bible says to honor the king. And so some people thought the Bible stood in the way for their political objectives. Oh boy, if something gets in the way of somebody's political objectives, there ain't no telling what those folks will do, right? So James Hutton came along in the late 1700s and wrote a book and said, I think the earth is millions of years old. Now you realize most folks thought the earth was a few thousand years old back then. So his book wasn't really very well received by most people. But he developed an idea called uniformitarianism. Ooh, big word. That will be on the test, I bet. Uniformitarianism says the present is the key to the past. No, I think the Bible is the only reliable key to the past. But James Hutton's book had a very profound influence on a young lawyer named Sir Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell was a lawyer from Scotland. He hated the Bible. Somebody calculated one time that if all the lawyers in the world were laid end to end around the equator, we would all be better off. But Charles Lyell in 1830 wrote this book right here, Principles of Geology. In this book, Lyell's scoffing kind of oozes off every page. I mean, this guy scoffed at the Bible at every opportunity, as much as a person dared back in 1830, because most people still believe the Bible. But he kept referring to it as ancient doctrines, and he said, if you have real science, you can't have you can't believe in religion, they don't mix together. He said, if you believe the Bible, you have a religious prejudice. Just any way to slap at the Bible. He said, men of superior talent, he's talking about himself, who thought for themselves and were not blinded by authority. And kids, you don't have to go through school very far at a secular university, and you will run across at least one professor that has this same scoffing attitude. He scoffed at the Bible. Lyell said his goal was to free science from Moses. He didn't like the Bible telling him what to do. Well, Charles Lyell, in 1830, in this book right here, is one of the primary fellows responsible for developing the geologic column. How many have ever heard of the geologic column before? They divided the earth up into layers, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, and all that, and they gave each layer a name, and an age, and an index fossil. Maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer. All of this was invented out of the clear blue in 1830s. The geologic column is actually the Bible for the evolutionist. It can only be found one place in the world. The only place you can really find it is in the textbook. The geologic column does not exist, folks. And they know that. This textbook says, if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. See, there is no geologic column. It doesn't exist. Now, it's true the earth has layers. That's not the question. The question is, how did they get there? You see, if the geologic column existed in one location, it would be 100 miles thick. The whole thing is made up from pieces here and there scattered around the world. And we'll show you how it's done in a minute. Line number 2, the geologic column does not exist. But every earth science textbook used in your town teaches the kids that it does exist and that each of those layers is a different age. Now, it is true the earth has many layers. I don't question that. The question is, how did they get there? How fast was that calf going? Keep that thought in mind. You see, if those layers were really different ages, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? I mean, don't you think if that layer sat there for 10 million years waiting for the next one, there'd be some erosion taking place? By the way, where's all this sediment coming from to go on top of the previous layer? It's got to come from somewhere, How come 70% of the earth is covered by sedimentary rock? Where did it come from? Obviously, got to come from someplace. You see, if you took a jar of dirt, added some water, and shook it up, and set it down, it'll settle into layers automatically. It's called hydrologic sorting. You can do it in a few minutes over your kitchen sink. Those layers are not different ages. Many years ago, I was preaching in a little town in South Dakota called Union Center. Union Center is right there. It's not even on the map. There are 40 people in the whole town. 38 of them came to church. I don't know where the other 2 were. Out pulling a calf, I reckon. But, man, we had a great meeting. And the preacher said, hey, Brother Hovind, let's go down to Rapid City, South Dakota. They've got a museum there with a bunch of dinosaur bones. I said, all right, man, I like dinosaurs. Let's go. So we all drove down to Rapid City. And we went in this museum, and a guide met us at the door. He said, "Folks, would you like me to give you a tour?" We said, "Sure, that'd be great." The first place we stopped on the tour was the geologic time scale. They've got it lit up behind glass. Boy, they are proud of that thing. And the guide walked over. We gathered around. He said, "Now, folks, this layer of rock right here is about 70 million years old." My daughter was 12 at the time. She raised her hand. She said, "Mister, how do you know how old that rock layer is?" He said, "Well, that's a good question, honey." He said, "We tell the age of the rock layers by what kind of fossils we find in them. They're called index fossils." She said, "Oh, thank you, sir." We walked around the other side, and we're standing over here, and the guide said, "Now, folks, these bones right here are about 100 million years old." My daughter raised her hand again. She said, "Sir, how do you know that layer is 100 million years old?" And he said, "Well, honey, that's a good question. You see, we tell the age of the rock layers by we tell the age of the bones by which rock layers they come from." She said, "Sir, when we were standing on the other side, you told me you knew the age of the layers by the fossils, and now you're telling me you know the age of the fossils by the layers." She said, "Isn't that circular reasoning?" I thought, wow, a chip off the old block. That guide had the strangest look on his face. It was almost as if he were thinking. He looked at my daughter. He looked at me. I wasn't about to help him. I thought, wow, this is going to be good. I got to hear this. He said, "You're right, that is circular reasoning." He said, "I never thought of that before." That poor fellow drove 50 miles one way that night to hear me preach in Union Center, South Dakota. The crowd swelled to 39. We set up a chair in the aisle. Afterwards, he talked to me for nearly an hour. He said, "Mr. Hovind, is everything I believe about geology wrong? I teach this stuff at the school." I said, "Oh, no, sir, I like geology." "Man, you've learned the names of all the minerals." Just that's a good trick. Did you know there are 1,200 different minerals? Some have names about that long. I said, "Oh, I like geology. You've learned the hardness test, the Rockwell test, the scratch test." I said, "Yes, sir, I like all that stuff." But as far as the layers being different ages, yeah, it's all baloney. But he doesn't dare quit teaching it because he'll lose his job. And kids, you might as well learn tonight, to some people in this world, money is more important than truth. And there are teachers all over America that do not believe in the geologic column, they do not believe in evolution, but they keep telling it to the kids anyway because they're afraid they might lose their job. The money is more important to that teacher than the fact that that kid may lose his faith in God's Word. I don't know what you call them here, but where I come from, we call those folks a coward. Look, your job is to do what's right. If you lose your job, well, go get another one then. But do what's right. Don't lie to the kids, okay? It's all based on circular reasoning, though. I'll show you. Here's what the evolutionists themselves are saying. This textbook says, you index fossils will date the rock layers. Notice what it says. Scientists use index fossils to determine the age of rock layers. Clues to Earth's past. They date the rock layers by the index fossils. But then a couple of pages later, they tell the students to date the layers by the index fossils. They date the fossils by the layers on one page and date the layers by the fossils on another page. Circular reasoning. Line number 3. Those layers are not dated by the fossils, and the fossils are not dated by the layers. They all formed at the same time. This fellow says, the intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply, feeling the explanations are not worth the trouble as long as the work brings results. This man says, it cannot be denied from a strictly philosophical standpoint. Geologists are here arguing in a circle. The succession of organisms has been determined by a study of their remains embedded in the rocks, and the relative ages of the rocks are determined by the remains of organisms that they contain. Encyclopedia Britannica. He can figure it out. It's circular reasoning. Ever since William Smith at the beginning of the 19th century, fossils have been and still are the most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks in which they occur. Apart from very modern examples, which really are archaeology, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. Now, kids, if somebody tells you they date the fossils by carbon dating or potassium-argon dating or uranium-235, uranium-238, that is simply not true. Fossils are dated by which layer they come from. The layers are dated by what kind of fossils they contain. Circular reasoning. See, radiometric dating is not even possible if the geologic column had not been erected first. See, radiometric dating didn't come till the 1950s. Geologic column came clear back in 1830. So it is grandfathered in as being true, even though it is a bunch of baloney. This fellow says, paleontologists cannot operate this way. There simply is no way to look at a fossil and say how old it is unless you know the age of the rocks it comes from. And this poses something of a problem. If we date the rocks by their fossils, how can we then turn around and talk about patterns of evolutionary change through time in the fossil record? Niles Eldredge believes in evolution, but he says, look, folks, it's circular reasoning. I like this one. The rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. Excuse me? Stratigraphy cannot avoid this kind of reasoning if it insists on using only temporal concepts because circularity is inherent in the derivation of timescales. This guy says the charge of circular reasoning can be handled several ways. It can be ignored as not the proper concern of the public. It can be denied by calling down the law of evolution. It can be admitted as a common practice, or it can be avoided by pragmatic reasoning. This guy says, are the authorities maintaining on the one hand that evolution is documented by geology, and on the other that geology is documented by evolution? Isn't this a circular argument? I like the title. Biologists, help. Somebody help me here. Yeah, you need some help. Give up on your dumb geologic column. That's what you ought to do. I like to ask evolutionists this question. I'll say, now fellas, your geologic column contains limestone, several different locations. You have Cambrian limestone, Jurassic limestone, Permian limestone, you know. You got limestone scattered all through here. If I handed you a piece of limestone, how would you know if it's 100 million year old Jurassic limestone or 600 million year old Cambrian limestone? I mean, how would you tell which it is? There's only one way they can tell the age of the limestone. That is by the index fossils. It is always dated by the fossils it contains. That's the way it works. This textbook used here in Escambia County says, trilobite fossils make good index fossils. If a trilobite is found in a rock layer, the rock layer probably formed 500 to 600 million years ago. You think so? Here's a human shoe print where somebody had stepped on and smashed a trilobite. The footprint was so clear you could see the stitching where they sewed the pieces together of the shoe. Now, how could a human with a shoe on step on a trilobite? One fellow said, well, maybe aliens visited the planet 500 million years ago. Oh, yeah. Those aliens will do it every time. Another guy said, maybe there was a large trilobite shaped like a shoe that fell on a small one. Well, there are some big trilobites, but they're not shaped like a shoe. I think 2 Peter has the best explanation for the whole thing. The scoffers are willingly ignorant. You would have to have help to be that dumb. You couldn't do it on your own. You'd have to go to school for years to learn that stuff. By the way, the trilobite has the most complicated eye ever in the world. Now, how did one of the first animals to evolve in the Cambrian explosion have the most complicated eye? Eyeballs are complicated. We'll get into more of that later. Actually, trilobites are not index fossils. There's some indication there are some trilobites still alive in the deep Peruvian trench in the ocean. So they're certainly not an index fossil, that's for sure. This rock has a graptolite embedded in it, a bunch of graptolites. If you took this rock to a geology professor and said, sir, would you please tell me how old this rock is? He would say, oh, this is easy. This contains an actual index fossil. It's called a graptolite. It is the New York State fossil. Until 1993, they were saying these rocks are 410 million years old. But then in 93, they discovered some graptolites are still alive in the South Pacific. Now think about it. If they're still alive, couldn't that mean they lived in any rock layer? Or be found in any rock layer? The textbooks today say the lobe-finned fish, the coelacanth, is an index fossil for rock that is 325 million years old. Excuse me, the coelacanth is still alive, folks. They catch them once in a while in the ocean. There's one on the news today about catching a coelacanth. Lobe-finned fish are not index fossils for anything. They're still around, and they're still just like the bones we find. Kids are told dinosaur bones are index fossils for rock that is 70 million years old. And yet dinosaur blood was found inside the bone. Don't you think it would rot in less than 70 million years? Did you know they broke open 18 million year old shale, and the magnolia leaves inside were still green until they were exposed to oxygen? You think they're going to stay green for 18 million years? I don't think so. The kids are told each of these layers is a different age. And the textbooks have it all real nice, you know. 80 million, 70 million, 60 million, 100 million. Charles Darwin did not like round numbers. He said the Wealdian deposits in England were 306,662,400 years old. Of course, he said that back in 1880, so now they'd be 306,662,520 years old. You know, you got to get it exactly right. Those layers are not different ages, folks. Here's a petrified tree standing up, running through a bunch of different rock layers. Now, if you get a petrified tree standing up, running through multiple rock layers, right away you ought to realize, you know, we have a problem here. How can those layers be different ages? Petrified trees that are standing up are found all over the world. I mean, it's very common to find these things. Here's some from Canada showing a petrified tree standing up. Here's one in Alabama. It comes out of a seam of coal, goes through a bunch of rock, and into another seam of coal. And yet each of those seams of coal is supposed to be, you know, different age by hundreds of thousands of years. This 30-foot petrified tree is one of hundreds found in Kettle's coal mines near Cookeville, Tennessee. The top and bottom are in different coal seams dated thousands of years apart. You think the tree stood there for thousands or millions of years and didn't rot? I don't think so. Petrified trees in the vertical position are found all over the world. Those layers cannot be different ages. Kids, don't let somebody in school tell you those layers are different ages. They can't be. We have scientific proof they're not different ages. Okay? When one tree extends through many rock layers, those layers are not different ages. Not by millions of years anyway, maybe by a few weeks or months at the most, before the tree would rot and fall down. Sometimes petrified trees are upside down, running through many rock layers. Now we really have a problem. As far as I can figure it out, the evolutionist has two ways to solve this. He can say the tree stood upright for millions of years while the layers slowly formed around them. Or he can say they grew through hundreds of feet of solid rock looking for sunlight. There's another way to solve this. You could say maybe all those trees were buried in a big flood. How fast was that calf going? Keep that thought in mind. This geologic column that's taught to the kids does not exist anywhere in the world. It is a lie, and yet the textbooks are full of this stuff about the geologic column, and that simply ought to be removed. Those pages should be cut out of the book. Okay? They have nothing to do with science. But in spite of the fact this geologic column does not exist, in the early 1800s, this is the book. And that geologic column teaching is the principle that caused people to reject the Bible. And they began thinking the earth got here by a process called uniformitarianism millions of years ago. And Charles Darwin graduated from Bible college in 1831. The year after this book came out, Darwin was going to be a preacher. As he couldn't find a job, his dad pulled a few strings and got him a job as the naturalist on board the Beagle, and he was going to sail around for 5 years and collect bugs. While he was sailing around, he brought some books with him. He brought his Bible, of course. He just got out of Bible college, and he brought this book by Charles Lyell. And this book, as he read it on that voyage, changed Darwin's life forever. He came back a skeptic, a scoffer. Later, he said in his letters, "Disbelief crept over me very slowly. I felt no distress." He slowly lost his confidence in the Bible. As Darwin sailed around the world, he came to the Galapagos Islands right there, off the coast of Ecuador, South America. There on those islands, Charlie noticed there were 14 different varieties of finches. They're called Darwin's finches today. He studied all the finches and said, you know what? I bet these finches had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. It was a bird. And then he said, maybe this proves the birds and the bananas are related. You say, oh, he didn't say that. Well, he sure did. Here's his book right here. On page 170, Charles Darwin said, it is a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other. Isn't he saying the birds and the bananas are related? I sure don't want to put any words in his mouth, but it looks to me like that's what he's saying, folks. See, what Charlie observed is called microevolution. Birds produce a variety of birds, no question. But that doesn't prove birds and bananas are related. So it is a lie to tell the students that all life forms are related. We don't know that. It could be that all life forms have the same designer. It doesn't prove they have a common ancestor. And if a book says it proves they have a common ancestor, cut that page out of your book. That's not science. See, Charlie observed microevolution. Dogs produce dogs, roses produce roses, but they are still the same kind. Microevolution is observable, it is scientific, it is a fact, folks. It happens. You might get a big dog or a little dog, but you always get a dog. And you know, I wouldn't even argue with the idea that possibly the dog, the wolf, and the coyote had a common ancestor. They probably did. But it's the same kind of animal. And a little kid can tell you the difference. I'll show you here. We're going to take a quiz here tonight. Do we have any kids in the room that are 5 or 6 years old? Who's 5? 5-year-old. Okay, what's his name?
Jacob.
Jacob. Here we have a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others, Jacob? The banana. All right, let's give him a hand. There we go. They're the same kind of animal, right? See, the Bible said 10 different times in the first chapter, God said the plants and animals will bring forth after his kind. Doesn't say after his species, after his kind. And that's all we've ever observed, folks. See, the word evolution has at least 6 different meanings. You have cosmic evolution, that would be the Big Bang. And then you would have to have chemical evolution. I mean, the chemicals would have to evolve. Then you'd have to have stellar evolution. Did you know nobody's ever seen one star forming? We see lots of them blow up. A nova or a supernova, that happens. But we've never seen one star forming. One professor said, you know, we calculated that if 20 stars explode near each other, it'll produce enough energy to make a new star. Oh, you got to lose 20 to gain 1. Oh, you ought to run for Congress. You could help those guys borrow their way out of debt. If you're losing 20 to gain 1, you're not going to get ahead. You don't need to be a genius to figure that out. Plus, even that we've never seen happen. That's all theoretical. Nobody's ever seen one star forming. But there's enough stars out there that everybody on Earth can personally own 2 trillion of them to yourself. There's plenty to go around, folks. But then we'd have to have organic evolution. That's the origin of life. Nobody's ever seen that happen. Nobody has a clue how life can start from non-living material. Every experiment done so far has been a bitter failure for evolution. We'll cover more on that later. Then we'd have macroevolution. That's the origin of major kinds. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. It just has never been observed. Then we have microevolution. Now this one is scientific. See, the first 5 are religious. You have to believe in evolution. It's a religion, and it should not be taught in public schools because it is nothing but a secular religion. That's all it is. Microevolution, we shouldn't even use that word. We should just call it a variation. Then the kids won't be confused into believing that they have evidence for evolution. So you have to start off with the Big Bang. And the first 3 steps, cosmic, chemical, and stellar evolution, would supposedly take billions of years. And then organic evolution supposedly happened, 3 to 4 billion years ago. And then macroevolution happened after that. And today, all we ever observe is actually variations. And they extrapolate that to mean they have evidence for all 6 meanings, and we do not. See, going from micro to macro requires a giant leap of faith and logic. Macroevolution is a fantasy based upon imagination. Now, you're welcome to believe in it. I don't care what you believe in. You can believe in the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, evolution. I don't care what you believe in. But I resent them using my tax dollars to teach this to the kids like it's part of science. That's where the problem comes in. You can teach your kids anything you want. But if you want to use my tax dollars to teach my kids something that's not science, and put it in a science class, in a science book, we're going to have to discuss that. I'm not going to do that voluntarily anyway. So this macroevolution doesn't happen. But teachers will give students examples of microevolution to try to get them to believe in macroevolution. It's called bait and switch. See, they will give the students one definition of the word evolution and then switch it on them in the middle of the textbook. Watch what this one does. This one says evolution is change over time. That's the first definition they give. Well, who can argue with that? Things change over time, don't they? Sure. Then down here it says, in other words, living things have changed over time. Now they've really narrowed it down, haven't they? What happened to the first 4? They already skipped over everything else, didn't they? They started with living things because they know the first 4 cannot be demonstrated. But they want the kid to assume that it happened. They kind of conveniently skip over that. And then definition number 3, this book says, evolution is defined as a change in species over time. Now they're right down to what we believe. Species change over time, but they're still the same kind of animal. So it is a lie to tell the students that what you mean by evolution is species changing over time. Because what they really mean is everything came from a common ancestor. They're simply lying to the kids. What they'll do, once they get them to believe in evolution by giving them examples of microevolution, they will slip in the other meanings like cosmic evolution and organic evolution. And then they tell the kid, if you don't believe in evolution, you don't understand science. I'm sorry, I think I do understand science, and evolution is not part of it. Evolution is part of a religion. Just because it's mixed in a science book doesn't make it science. Did you know beer is often sold at football games? Beer has nothing to do with sports. And beer does not become athletic by association with sports either. And the fact that somebody mixed in some evolution in this textbook doesn't make the evolution part of science. It waters down the textbook is what it does. There's an awful lot of good science in here. I'm not against the science. I'm just against the poison they mixed in with it. That's all. Evolution isn't part of it. See, what they're doing is a classic case of what is called bait and switch. If I ran an ad in the paper that said, new Mercedes, $10. How many of you would line up to come buy it? Just about everybody, okay. And when you get there, you knock on the door. Mr. Hovind, I'm here to get your Mercedes. I say, well, man, I'm glad you're here, but listen, actually it's $99,000. I switched the price. Well, now, if I bait you to bring you in with a $10 offer and then switch it to $99,000, that's called bait and switch. That's illegal. Car dealers would go to jail for that, wouldn't they? But that's what the textbooks do every day to the kids. Now, I get some professors, they'll say, you know, macroevolution is just micro over longer periods of time. Well, first place, that's just dreaming. No one has ever seen that happen. No one's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. You have to imagine that it happened long ago and far away. It is not science. It is religion. By the way, there are genetic barriers that stop this from happening. By the way, who would the partly evolved dog marry anyway? Don't you have to get two of them evolving at the same time, of the opposite sex, in the same place, at the same time in history? They got to find each other and be interested. You got a bunch of problems there, okay? It just doesn't work, folks. Intermediate forms have no way of living in their environment. Variations do happen, nobody argues with that, but they have limits. You know, farmers have been trying to get bigger pigs for a long time, haven't they? Do you think they'll ever get a pig as big as Texas? I bet there's a limit in there somewhere, isn't there? Do you know cockroaches eventually become resistant to pesticides? You guys have cockroaches here in Gulf Breeze, don't you? Yeah. You call them palmetto bugs. Don't lie to me. That's a roach, okay? Do you think they'll ever become resistant to a sledgehammer? I bet there's a limit in there someplace, isn't there? And see, the animals are still producing the same kind of animal. That's not evolution. Dogs producing dogs is not evolution. It's a variation. And the information for that variation was already present in the gene pool. No new genetic information is added. You only selected part of the population to survive. Actually, you lost genetic information. That's not evolution, folks. And the gene pool of the new variety is much more limited than it was before. Somebody spent years crossbreeding dogs to develop a Chihuahua. Imagine that. All that work to make a dog that is 100% useless. Hey, turn all the Chihuahuas loose back into the woods and tell me how long they will last. They'd go up to that wolf. Yep, 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 yep. Crunch. End of gene pool, right? It wouldn't happen. See, genetic information is lost, not added when you get a variety. Now, there's lots of varieties, no question. I come from Illinois, corn country. Did you know there are so many kinds of corn, they have to number them? You'll be driving down the highway and it'll say BX65, you know, don't mix it up with XL29, something will blow up. But I'll tell you what, folks, you can crossbreed your corn from now to the cows come home and you are always going to get corn. You will never get a hamster or a tomato or a whale to grow on your corn stalk, okay? It ain't going to happen. Variations happen. Nobody argues about that. There's hundreds of varieties of dogs, and they might have had a common ancestor. It was a dog, okay? This Irish textbook calls it divergent evolution. Don't give me that. It's still a dog, okay? Giving it a fancy name like divergent evolution doesn't make it part of science. It doesn't change the facts. It is still a dog, okay? The Spanish textbook shows the zebra and the horse probably had a common ancestor. I agree. They probably did. And it looked like a horse. Probably the cows we have in the world came from a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue about that. And it was a cow. But see, what happened in the late 1700s, Hutton came along and took away the idea that the earth is 6,000 years old. And people really began to doubt the Bible in the early 1800s. And some Christians believed that they had proven the earth was millions of years old. And so in the early 1800s, they began to look for ways to make the Bible say the earth is millions of years old. And that's why they invented the gap theory and the day-age theory and progressive creation and about 6 different compromise positions, all of them unscriptural, unscientific, and unnecessary. The earth is not millions of years old. The Bible was fine. Leave it alone, okay? It's doing fine on its own. But then Charles Lyell came along in 1830 and took away the flood. In people's minds, they no longer associated strata with the flood. And then along came Charles Darwin, and he took away the Creator. And if you want to see what happened to the history of the world after 1850, when evolution became so popular, you know, when we had the rise of communism, socialism, Marxism, Nazism, the New World Order, you better watch videotape number 5, which is very politically incorrect. Or we talk about, never mind, do not watch that one, okay? But it talks about the New World Order and how it's tied into this evolution philosophy. But you know those 3 false teachings, millions of years, uniformitarianism, and evolution, are still in textbooks today? Textbooks used in this town are still teaching that stuff. The Bible warned us in 1 Timothy. Paul said, Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called. Evolution's not science. It's a religion. Adolf Hitler said, let me control the textbooks. I will control the state. Professor Wilson from Harvard University said, as were many persons from Alabama, I was a born-again Christian. When I was 15, I entered the Southern Baptist Church with great fervor and interest in the fundamentalist religion. I left at 17 when I got to the University of Alabama and heard about evolution theory. And now he's up at Harvard destroying the next generation of kids coming through his class, isn't he? All you got to do is go to a secular university for a couple of years and you will run across at least one professor, probably several, and they think it is their duty in life to destroy your faith. Man, are they in trouble when they face God. Did you know 75% of the kids that go from Christian homes to secular schools lose their faith after 1 year of college? What is in these books anyway? This fellow said, fundamentalist parents have no right to indoctrinate their children in their beliefs. We are preparing their children for the year 2000 and life in a global one-world society. And those children will not fit in. Hold on just a minute. Nebraska senator, member of the board, Nebraska Board of Education, said he is preparing my children for something? Excuse me, sir. You just better prepare your children for what you want, but I'll prepare mine for what I want. I want mine to serve God. I don't know what you want for yours. But these books are destroying the faith of kids. Kids love to learn. That's normal. That's good. But what if the information that's in the textbooks that they're learning from is inaccurate? What if it's been proven wrong? What if there are some things in the textbooks that have been proven wrong 100 years ago, but they're still in there? I was in a debate one time, and I went through the evidence I'm sharing with you on this seminar about lies in the textbooks, and I shared 15 or 20 different things that are not true that are still in the books. And the professor got up and he said, now folks, Mr. Hovind is right. These things are not true. However, Mr. Hovind, I've got a question for you. What would you replace them with? I said, folks, what he's trying to not say is, you know, we want the kids to believe in evolution. We have to give them some evidence. He's taken away our evidence, so it's his job to find some replacement evidence. I said, sir, if you don't have any evidence for your theory, I'm sorry. Maybe you should consider getting a new theory. It's not up to me to provide evidence for your theory. I think the theory's dumb to begin with. But you know, if there are some things in the textbooks that have been proven wrong a long time ago, but they still keep them in the books, you have to wonder, is the author ignorant? Or is he deliberately lying to the kids in order to get them to believe a theory? Is there really a bigger plan toward creating a one-world government, and evolution is a vital part of that philosophy? See, our founding fathers said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. See, people that believe they've got rights that come from the Creator, those people don't make good slaves. Eventually, they're going to throw the tea in the harbor. Right? But suppose somebody wants a one-world government, a new world order. Ooh, now they've got to get everybody believing there is no Creator. Maybe this evolution is part of a bigger picture. We'll get into that more on video tape number 5. But here's a page showing the kids the evidence for evolution. They're going to say they have evidence from fossils, evidence from structure, evidence from molecular biology, evidence from development. What are they going to show these kids anyway? See, evolution is based on 2 faulty assumptions. Number 1, they will say mutations make something new, and number 2, natural selection makes it survive and take over the population. Neither one of those works. Now, it's true mutations happen. There are mutations in the world, okay? Probably all the roses you've ever seen are mutants from the original rose. Mutations happen, no question. But they do not produce any kind of evolution. All it is the same kind of animal, and no new information is added. This is a mutated bull. He's got 5 legs. He can't run any faster. By the way, no new information was added. Doesn't the bull already have a gene code that tells him how to make a leg? It just built one in the wrong place, that's all. That's not new information. That is scrambled information. Here's a short-legged sheep. Look what the textbook says. This mutation would not last in nature. Well, of course not, man. He's the first one the wolf is going to catch. Go, boys, go. Here comes the wolf. Here's a 2-headed turtle. It's a mutant. Not ninja, but he's mutant. See? He's going to freeze first winter. Nobody makes a double-neck turtleneck sweater. I've never seen one. Sure, mutations happen, but it's a scrambling of information that already exists that doesn't create anything new. It's like taking the letters out of the word Christmas and scrambling them up. You can make all sorts of different words out of those letters. But you can't make Xerox, zebra, or queen. The letters aren't available. And scrambling existing information does not create anything new. Look what this textbook says. Boys and girls, here's a fruit fly. It says normal fruit flies have 2 wings. This mutant has 4. This rare mutation, like most mutations, is harmful. Then it says beneficial mutations are the raw material for natural selection. Well, now that's interesting. They showed us a harmful mutation. But they told the kids beneficial mutations is how it works. Why didn't they show us a beneficial one? Would you like to know why? Because nobody's ever seen one. Nobody's ever proven one beneficial mutation. One professor said, "Oh, I know a beneficial mutation." I said, "Really? I'd like to hear about this." He said, "Did you know in Africa, people that get sickle cell anemia cannot get malaria?" Oh. That's like saying, if you cut off your feet, you can't get athlete's foot. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's not a beneficial mutation. Think about it, okay? They don't show the kids a beneficial mutation because nobody's ever seen one. This textbook says we've got evidence from evolution. Evolution and natural selection go together. Now, wait a minute. Next page it says, natural selection causes evolution. And this is the book used in Santa Rosa High School and Escambia High School and Pensacola High School right here. Okay? Natural selection causes evolution. No, wait a minute. Natural selection happens, folks, but it doesn't cause any evolution. It's a lie. Natural selection selects the strongest to survive, generally, and it keeps the species strong. It is a conservative process. It is not a creative process. It only keeps the species strong. Creationists thought of it first. It does not give you any new information. See, if you worked in a factory and your job was to check the cars for mistakes, isn't it normal for a factory to have quality control? Your job, when it comes down the line, they get all done building it, you're supposed to kick the tires and slam the doors and, drive it around and see if it works. Suppose your job is to reject all of the cars that don't work right. How long would it take that process to change the car to an airplane? You say, it'll never change it to an airplane. That's my point. Natural selection will not change the species to something else. It'll make sure it stays a good species. It's a conservative process. See, survival of the fittest is true to some extent, but it does not explain arrival of the fittest. It doesn't tell you how it got there. And, kids, we're going to learn a big word tonight. Survival of the fittest is called a tautology. A tautology is a sentence that means nothing. You can go home and tell your brother, "Oh, you're speaking in tautologies." In other words, what you said means nothing, right? Here's how it works. You say, "Professor, why did it survive?" He says, "Well, because it's the fittest." "Oh, how do you know it's the fittest?" "Because it survived." "I see. Is that how you tell?" Yeah, it means nothing. And by the way, it's not always survival of the fittest. If a whale goes through a school of fish and eats 80% of them, it's not survival of the fittest. It's called survival of the luckiest. That's what really happens out there. But you know, some folks make these brilliant observations and still come to the wrong conclusions. That's possible to do, you know. Maybe you heard about the scientists that were going to see how far the frog could jump. They put that big old frog down there and said, "Jump, frog, jump." That frog, he took off, he jumped 80 inches. They couldn't believe it. They brought the frog back, cut off one leg. Said, "Jump, frog." He only jumped 70 inches. They brought him back, cut off another leg. Said, "Jump, frog." He only went 60. They brought him back, cut off another leg. Said, "Jump, frog." He only went 50. They brought the frog back, cut off his last leg. Said, "Jump, frog." You know, they expected he'd go about maybe 40 inches based on the data so far. He actually jumped 0. I mean, the frog did not move. They yelled louder, "Jump, frog!" They screamed and hollered. The frog flat didn't move. They were baffled. They tried the experiment again. New frog. Got the same results. So the scientists gathered their data and they said, "You know what, folks? We can conclude that the frog jumps less as the legs were removed." Now that's a good observation. I mean, you got to give them credit, folks. They did observe the data. Okay? They said, "So when we got to no legs, though, something strange happened. We must conclude that a frog with no legs goes deaf." No. See, you had a good observation going, but you got a bad conclusion. Jump, frog, jump. That's what happened with the fruit flies. They took the flies in the laboratory and they nuked them and microwaved them and x-rayed them, and they got those flies to have all sorts of mutant flies. They got a fly with curled wings. He flies around, bzz, 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 can't go anywhere. They got a fly with no wings. What do you call that? A crawl? You can't fly. They raised all these flies, and all they ever got was flies that were worse off than the original fly. One fellow said, "Oh, wait a minute, we got one fly that had wings 4% larger than the average fly. Proof for evolution." Excuse me, it's still a fly. That's not proof for evolution. That's a variation of the same kind of animal. But they got their data together and said, "You know what, folks? The mutations we observed produced flies that were worse off than Grandpa Fly." Good observation. So they said, "You know, fruit flies must have evolved as far as they can go." Oh, bad conclusion. Jump, frog, jump. Maybe you could conclude that God made them right to begin with. Oh, they don't want to give God the credit, that's for sure. Then they do the peppered moth experiment. This is in just about every textbook, and it's sad that it's still in there because it was proven wrong years ago. The whole experiment was a fake. But here's what they tell the kids in the textbook. Boys and girls, they went around and counted the moths on the trees in England and found it was 95% light-colored moths and 5% black. Counting the moths on the trees. Must have been a government project. Then, so the story goes, they burned coal in the factories and the trees turned black, and they counted the moths again, renewed their grant, and found out it was now 95% black moths and 5% light. It turns out, they finally admitted the guy faked the entire experiment. He glued dead moths to the trees. The picture in your book is of dead moths glued to a tree. That's how it was done for your textbook. The whole thing's a fake. But even if it happened, folks, it didn't prove any evolution. They started with a moth, they ended with a moth. The peppered moth experiment is baloney. Those pages ought to be cut out of the textbook. But they said the moth population was able to shift from mostly white to mostly black when the trees turned black. Sounds good. It wasn't true, but it sounds good. They're going to say, the moth population was able to adapt to the new environment. That sounds good too. Then they're going to say, see, boys and girls, this helps prove we all came from a rock. No, it does not do any such thing. By the way, the moth thing has been proven wrong and admitted to be wrong a long time ago and should be removed from the textbook. But they tell the kids to get a large sheet of black paper, 1 meter square. By the way, I like to kick this dog every time I walk by. Did you know all the new textbooks are metric? Now, I understand the metric system real thoroughly, okay? I'll take a metric quiz against anybody you know. I taught physics for years. But I'm not sure I want a kid coming to help build my house that doesn't know what a 2x4 is. So if you're a patriot, make your paper 39.37 inches square instead. And then get 200 black circles and 200 white circles and put them on the paper. Okay, now boys and girls, we're going to see who can pick up the most in 1 minute. Ready, set, go. Well, of course, you're going to pick up the white circles off the black paper. You don't need to be a genius to figure this out. And then they're going to say, boys and girls, see, this helps prove evolution. No, teacher, this proves we've got extra money to waste in our school district. We just cut up a whole bunch of good paper and threw it on the floor. Now we got to pay the janitor to get the ones we couldn't find. Actually, the peppered moth is proof of design. God's planning ahead. He wants to make sure those moths survive no matter what happens to the background. It's called planning ahead. Did you know that General Motors and Ford, and somebody told me even Honda, will put sometimes an air conditioner and a heater in the same car? Now, wait a minute. Doesn't an air conditioner and a heater do the opposite thing? Why would they put them both in the same car? Well, you see, they're not sure if it's going to warm climate or cold climate. So they make the car adaptable to the different environments. That's planning ahead on the part of the designer. That's not evolution. And the peppered moth is proof of the designer planning ahead. Now look what they tell the kids in this book. Boys and girls, we're going to learn to think critically. Now watch carefully, kids, or you will be tricked. It says, do you think humans are still evolving? What kind of question is that? That's one of those questions like, have you stopped beating your wife yet? Well, if I say yes, I'm admitting I did. If I say no, I'm still doing it. Right? Go back and look at the original question. Do you think humans are still evolving? Doesn't that question assume that evolution happened? What if a kid doesn't believe in evolution at all? How's he supposed to answer that question? This question is not designed to teach the kid how to think. This is designed to teach him what to think. This is a Soviet-style indoctrination type question. And when the kid's all done taking this course, he's going to think he knows how to think. But he doesn't. He knows how to be told what to think. He's been indoctrinated. That's all that's happened. And they're going to say, boys and girls, we've got evidence of evolution from structure. This is called the homology argument. They're going to say, boys and girls, if you look at the forelimbs of the animals, you will see the human has two bones in the wrist. And they're called the radius and the ulna. Yep, I knew about that. I broke both of mine a couple times. And boys and girls, guess what? Take a look at the whale. He's got two bones in his flipper. And they're called the radius and the ulna. See, that proves we're related. Teacher, who named them? The whale? I doubt it, right? But the textbook says this similar structures in the forelimbs is one of the evidences for evolution. Here's what it says right here. I didn't write this, okay? This is from the book that you and I paid for. It says, boys and girls, comparative anatomy provides further evidence of evolution. The commonality suggests that these and other vertebrate animals are all related. They probably evolved from a common ancestor. Hold on just a minute. This is lie number 10. This does not prove they have a common ancestor. This might prove they have a common designer. You know, maybe the same guy designed them all. That would make them similar, wouldn't it? Did you know the lug nuts from a Chevy will screw onto a Pontiac? That proves they both evolved from a Honda 18 million years ago. No, that proves they both came from the same designers, right? It's not proof for common ancestor. But they're going to say, you know what, boys and girls, many animals have a similar forelimb structure. Good observation. They must have had a common ancestor. Hold it. Bad conclusion. Jump, frog, jump. Then they'll say, see, this helps prove we all came from a rock. Oh, real bad conclusion. Now, this textbook says we've got evidence from development. Now, there aren't too many things about evolution theory that make me any angrier than this. So I will try to stay calm as we discuss this tonight. This is a BSCS biology textbook. By the way, BSCS series is one of the worst there is as far as teaching evolution. It almost always rates the highest in evolution teaching as far as the percentage of text devoted to evolution. And some books are worse than others. We'll get into more of that later. But this one says, the similarity between early stages in the development of many different animals helped convince Darwin that all forms of life shared common ancestors. What's he talking about here? This Merrill Earth Science book says we've got evidence for evolution from embryology. The embryos growing inside the mother. It says it has gills like a fish. Are those little folds of skin gills? I'm sorry, that is lie number 11. Those folds of skin are not gills. Those little folds of skin under the chin later develop into glands in the throat and bones in the ear. It never has anything to do with breathing. Never. I've seen fat folks that have 5 or 6 chins and they cannot breathe through any of them except the top one. Okay? Those are not gill slits. Ernst Haeckel made up this whole thing back in 1869. See, Haeckel read Darwin's book when it came out. The book was published in 1859. Haeckel read it apparently the next year, 1860. As he read this book, he really liked it. He said, wow, Darwin says we will find evidence for the theory. Now, Haeckel taught embryology at the University of Jena in Germany. He knew they were looking for evidence to support the theory. Nobody found any. So 10 years later, Haeckel decided he would help the cause out by making some evidence to support the theory. He took the drawing of a human and a dog embryo, and he changed them. He made his drawings look just alike and said, see, this proves the human and the dog are related. Look how similar the embryos are. He lied, folks. He did this in 1869. On top are Haeckel's drawings. Underneath are actual photographs of those creatures. Now, either Haeckel is a real lousy artist or he's a liar. He made huge charts of his fake drawings and traveled all over Germany, and Haeckel was the man who just about single-handedly converted the Germans to believing in evolution. That logical next step from that teaching was, well, if evolution is true, maybe one race is superior to the rest. And maybe that's the German race. And maybe we ought to go beat everybody up and take over the world. And you won't understand the history of the last 150 years till you tie evolution into it. Haeckel was convicted of fraud at his own university. They had a trial. He was convicted of fraud. Did you know in 1874, it was proven Haeckel was wrong. He was a liar. But guess what? This year at University of West Florida, they are still using Haeckel's drawings as evidence for evolution. Proven wrong 125 years ago. Now, I know it takes a little while for textbooks to get up to date, but I think 125 years is plenty of time, okay? By the way, in Ireland, they're still using this embryology idea as evidence for evolution. They're still using it in Holt biology, used in Escambia County in Santa Rosa County, Florida. They're still using it in Glencoe biology, saying the embryo has gill slits. They're still using it at Troy State University, Alabama, saying the embryo has gill pouches. It's used in every school that I have been to. Bring me your textbooks from your city, and I will show you it's still in there. Because they don't have a replacement. They don't want to take out all these evidences because they don't have any replacement. This one shows a 5 to 6 week embryo, and it says by 7 months, the fetus looks from the outside like a tiny normal baby, but it is not. It's not a baby at 7 months. Excuse me, a whole bunch of kids born at 5.5 months survive. That's a lie, folks. It is human at conception. Don't tell the kids it's not a baby at 7 months. It is human the moment it's conceived. Did you know a lady had surgery on her baby before the baby was born? They cut the mother open, cut the uterus open, and the baby reached out and grabbed the doctor's finger. 5 months along. No, it's human at conception. The angel of the Lord said, behold, thou art with fetus. No, I believe he said you are with child, didn't he? See, it's a child, not a choice. It's a child. So why do they keep this lie in the textbooks anyway? Well, that's the only way to justify abortion. They want the kid to think this is not a human, this is just a fetus, it's just a thing, you know, it's a blob of tissue, it's a problem, it's in the way. We can eliminate this with an abortion. So this stuff is kept in the textbooks to justify abortion. Maybe you heard about Anna Rosa. She was a botched abortion. She had her arm chopped off. She survived the abortion, believe it or not. Everybody says, oh, that's terrible. I agree. But what if they would have cut her head off instead? We never would have heard about her, would we? Hey, it happened today to 4,500 kids in America. Probably some in your town. Now listen, abortion is not the unpardonable sin. I've got some very close, dear friends that have had an abortion. God still loves you. He can still use you. But it is murder. A lot of this Bible is written by folks that were murderers. God can forgive you, and He can still use you in a great way. Moses was a murderer. King David was a murderer. You just don't want to justify it, that's all. Admit, God, I'm sorry, it was wrong. Please forgive me and help me get on with my life. God can still use you in a great way. Don't get discouraged. But don't go around claiming it's okay, because it's not. Now, I live in Pensacola, Florida. You might have heard of my town. We've had several abortion clinics blown up and several doctors shot and killed that were performing abortions. I didn't shoot any doctors and I didn't blow any clinics up. Okay, and I don't think Jesus would do it that way either. He didn't, he lived under Roman control. He didn't go around blowing up tanks and burning down bridges. But the doctors were murderers, plain and simple. When the first doctor got shot, I was preaching down in Fort Lauderdale at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Christian School. And the next day I was flying home. Right in front of me on the airplane were two ladies, two women from NOW, National Organization for Wild Women. They were going to come up to Pensacola and hold a rally and march around town, protesting this doctor getting shot. As we got off the plane, we're walking down the gangway. I noticed they had on their shirt in huge block letters, "Choice above all." So, being my mild-mannered self, I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, what does this mean, choice above all?" She said, "We believe a woman ought to have a right to choose." I said, "Choose what?" She said, "Choose to have an abortion. It's her body, Well, yes, ma'am. If she wants to abort her body, I suppose that's fine. But it looks to me like she's trying to abort somebody else's body. I said, "Ma'am, I'm kind of curious about this. I've got 3 kids, one of each. I delivered one of my kids at home. He's sitting right there. I said, I taught biology and anatomy. I used to raise hamsters. I'm kind of familiar with how this works. I said, would you please tell me why the woman's right to choice stops at birth? I mean, why don't we let the mother choose to kill the baby after it's born? It'd be a lot safer and simpler. Hey, I got an idea. Let's extend abortion rights up until the kid is 2 years old. I know a lot of mothers with a 2-year-old that have thought about it a time or two. We thought about it a lot when my kids were 2. Hey, I got an idea. Let's extend abortion rights up until the kid is 18. I bet they'd behave a lot better. Okay, son, one more time and I'm going to abort you. Teacher, where's Johnny today? Well, he didn't do his homework yesterday, so his mommy aborted him. Hey, grades would skyrocket, wouldn't they? Well, the women did not want to talk about it anymore, so they went and got their luggage, and I got my luggage, and I'm waiting to, have them take me home. I've had the taxi cab take me home, and there's a cameraman there. He showed up from Chicago to film the rally. The news media and the textbooks always tries to make the abortion crowd look good. They use positive-sounding words like pro-choice. And they use negative-sounding words for us, like anti-abortion. You ever notice that in the textbooks and in the news media? It's always pro-choice and anti-abortion. How about let's call them pro-death? Well, I got talking to this cameraman, he's going to film the rally. I thought, wait a minute, it's going to make worldwide news. You're going to get 6 people marching around town. You can get 100,000 people to line your streets against abortion, and it won't make the news. Have you noticed that? So I'm talking to the cameraman, and I said, I live right here in Pensacola, and I think there's 2 things wrong with what happened to this doctor. He said, oh yeah, what's wrong with this? I said, well, there should have been a trial first. Nobody should be shot without a fair trial. I said, secondly, the state of Florida should have shot him after the trial. Griffith shouldn't have shot him. If you don't understand my position on abortion, see me later. I'll try to clarify it for you. But they always give them the positive-sounding words. That's one of the reasons I won't take the local newspaper. I'm sorry, I just don't want my money going to support that cause. We get a call at the office once in a while. Hey, would you like to take the Pensacola News-Journal? I say, no, ma'am, we don't have a parakeet. You'll figure that one out later. The news media is always slanted to the liberal side. Remember when the kids got shot in Colorado? Right away they jumped on gun control, didn't they? Wait a minute. If kids keep getting shot in our schools, maybe it's time to look at a couple of other issues. You know, maybe the real issue is, should we have public schools? I mean, at least let's discuss it. Maybe the real issue is, should we teach the kids evolution, which says there is no God, which ultimately leads to this kind of behavior? You probably don't know it, but both the boys that did the shooting were strong believers in evolution. They did the shooting on Adolf Hitler's birthday on purpose. They shot Isaiah Shoals just because he was black and Hitler was a racist big time. Eric's t-shirt said, "Natural selection." They shot Cassie just because she believed in God. See, evolution is the opposite of that. And you can't blame guns for what happened at Columbine. Those kids broke 18 gun laws when they went into the school to shoot everybody. Do you think 2 more gun laws would have stopped them? See, blaming guns for Columbine is like blaming spoons for Rosie O'Donnell being fat. Okay? It is not the spoon's fault, okay? And it's not the gun's fault either. You know, maybe the real issue is, should certain criminals be publicly executed? In France, they were dragging this guy to the guillotine to chop his head off one time, and somebody from the crowd shouted, "Do you think this will deter crime?" They said, "It will for him." It certainly will. You know, maybe the real issue is, all law-abiding citizens should be required to carry guns to protect themselves. Now, I'm saying we should just discuss these things, okay? Suppose every teacher in Columbine High School, just the teachers, suppose the teachers were required to carry a gun. How far down the hallway would those kids have gotten? All any kid has to do is run to the nearest classroom and say, "Teacher, teacher, there's boys out there shooting everybody." "Okay, kids, read page 37. I'll be right back." You say, "That's terrible." Oh, you mean it's better for all the kids to get shot? Think about it. Lenin said, "One man with a gun can control 100 people without one." Imagine you're in a bank waiting to cash a check or get some cash. A guy walks in, pulls out a gun, and says, "Everybody lay on the floor." Everybody lays on the floor. Right? He's in control. Now imagine everybody that's a customer at the bank has a weapon hidden. Everybody has a concealed weapon. The guy runs in, "Everybody lay on the floor." You lay on the floor, sir. Now look, I'm in favor of gun control. I really am. Gun control is being able to hold it steady and hit the intended target. That's gun control. Anyway, back to the issue here. The logic they use to justify abortion is absolutely insane. They're going to say it's not human. I'm sorry, that was proven wrong in 1874. They're going to say, well, it's not viable. It can't live on its own. You're not viable either, stark naked on the North Pole, you know. Is the baby viable after it's born? Lay it on the sidewalk for a couple of months. Let's see how it does, right? They're going to say, well, the child might be unwanted. There's kids that are already born that are unwanted. Should we kill all of them? My parents moved 4 times when I was growing up, but I found them every time. They're going to say the child might be a financial burden. Show me a kid that's not. Every kid's a financial burden. They're going to say, well, it may be from rape or incest. Well, then kill the rapist, not the baby. Execute the rapist and adopt out the baby. It's not that complicated, you know. See, in case you don't know how it works, there's 3 people involved here: the mother, the father, and the baby. If we have to kill one, why is it always the baby? Why don't we abort the mother once in a while? One doctor got kind of upset with me, and he said, "Dr. Hovind, do you think if a woman is raped and gets pregnant, she should be required to carry the baby?" I said, "Sir, that's a horrible thought. But suppose it happens. And suppose she does carry the baby. And she has her baby. 5 years later, she is holding her 5-year-old, and she's trying to cook supper. And her mind flashes back to the horrible experience she had, and she loses control just for a few minutes and kills her 5-year-old. Is it murder?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, okay. Suppose she would have killed it 5 months after it was born. Would that be murder?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, suppose she would have killed it 5 minutes after it was born. Would that be murder?" He could see where I was going. I said, "Let me help you out, sir." "Yes." What if she would have killed it 5 minutes before it was born? Like the DNC, or the DNX abortion that Clinton and Gore voted for. It's still murder, folks. Still murder. And to me, abortion is a major issue. I won't vote for any candidate if I think he supports abortion. I'd rather have Mickey Mouse in there than a candidate that supports abortion. Hey, if you really want pro-choice, let's really have choice in Florida. Is it against the law in your county to shoot deer at night with spotlights? You have to give them a sporting chance, right? We're going to pass a law in Florida that says if a woman goes for an abortion, the nurse will have a jar of marbles, and we're going to give the kid a sporting chance. We're going to have a lottery, okay? One marble in the jar will say baby, one will say mother, and one will say father. Let's put one more in there for doctor and another one in there for governor. And we're going to draw a marble to see who gets killed. Let's put a whole bunch in there for president, and let's make it, a good lottery here. So we're going to have a lottery. Hey, how many folks would have an abortion then? Hey, did you know that everybody that ever voted for abortion has already been born? Now think about that one. They're going to say, well, abortion is legal. That doesn't mean it's right. In 1936, the German Supreme Court declared Jews are not persons. And with that decision, it cleared the way for Hitler to begin slaughtering the Jews. They began rounding up the Jews and torturing them and killing them. I've been to Germany 3 times. I read lots of books about Hitler and the Holocaust just to keep my blood boiling. What he did was because of his belief in evolution. That's why he killed the Jews, folks. Hitler believed the German race was the superior race and they deserved to rule the world. The German Führer has consistently sought to make the practice of Germany conform to the theory of evolution. Did you know Hitler offered to send the Jews to anybody who would take them? Roosevelt refused to allow the Jews to come to America in 1938. Hitler said, I'll send them to you on luxury ships. America wouldn't take them. In Hitler's book, which was ghostwritten for him, 1924, Hitler said, no more than nature desires the mating of weaker with stronger individuals, even less does she desire the blending of a higher with a lower race. Adolf, who is a higher race? In his book, he continually talks about Aryan blood, the superior race and the lower peoples. Who's the lower people, Adolf? Well, I happened to find Hitler's hit list one day as I was researching on Hitler. Hitler thought the Nordics, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegians, were close to pure Aryan, the superior race. Did you catch all that? Blonde hair, blue-eyed Norwegian. Vorden står till idag. Ja, sure, you betcha. Oofda. He thought they were the superior race. He thought the Germans were mostly Aryan. He said the Mediterraneans are slightly Aryan. The Slavics are half Aryan, half ape. The Orientals are slightly ape, the black Africans are predominantly ape, and the Jews are close to pure ape. There's the list he was going on, folks. That's why he hated the Jews, because of his belief in evolution. He really thought he was doing the world a favor by eliminating the inferiors. By the way, he also hated the blacks. Does anybody know where the Olympics was held in 1936? Berlin, Germany. Does anybody know who won the most gold medals? Jesse Owens, the black American athlete. Hitler was so angry he walked out of the stadium and said, it is unfair to make my men race against this animal. My Bible says all nations are of one blood. And if you will send money to a missionary to go across the ocean and win a black man to Christ, and you won't go across the street to win a black man to Christ and let him come to your church, you are a hypocrite. And I know I'm standing in the South, but you're still a hypocrite, okay? We're all of one blood, folks. A couple of years ago when I was in Germany, I went into the courtroom at Nuremberg where they held the trial. Do you know, during the trial, when those criminals were being tried for what they did, the war crimes, they said, we did nothing illegal, we were just obeying orders. It's exactly correct. But guess what? They were found guilty anyway, weren't they? And even though abortion is perfectly legal in America, somebody's going to be found guilty of murder someday at God's trial. Don't justify it. 1973, our Supreme Court said the word person does not include the unborn. And with that decision right there, it sealed the fate now of 38 million kids who've died by abortion. That's the whole population of California. Did you know 1,000 million, that's 1 billion kids have died worldwide? They say the average woman now has 1 abortion in her lifetime. 1 per person. 1/6 of the world's population has already been killed just by abortion. Hey, if he's not alive, why is he growing? If he's not a human being, what kind of being is he anyway? And here these doctors get paid to commit these abortions. My Bible says, "Cursed be he that taketh reward to slay an innocent person." And all the people shall say, Amen. The Bible says God hates hands that shed innocent blood. It's murder, folks. Margaret Sanger started a group called Planned Parenthood back in 1916. Her goal was to eliminate the inferior races. She thought the blacks, the Orientals, and the Jews were human weeds. She wanted to eliminate them. Their motto was, "No gods and no masters." They wanted to use birth control to create a race of thoroughbreds. One of Hitler's doctors wrote an article for her magazine. You know, Hitler referred to the Jews as a parasite in the body of nations. Interesting. The abortionists today refer to the unborn child as a parasite in the woman's body. Margaret Sanger said, "We don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Wow, interesting. Today they have a Negro president, Fay Waddleton. But the goal has not changed, surprisingly. They're still racist. In 1952, this document was published, "How to Plan Your Children. Your questions answered." What is birth control? Look what they say here. Is it an abortion? Definitely not. An abortion requires an operation. It kills the life of a baby after it has begun. It is dangerous to your life and health. It may make you sterile. Boy, they've changed their tune in 40 years, haven't they? Now, $300 million goes to support abortion. And by the way, United Way is one of Planned Parenthood's supporters. And I remember every couple of months they'd come around at the job when I worked at General Motors and say, "You know, we want to have 100% compliance in United Way. Would you like to give 2 hours of your paycheck?" I said, "No." They said, "Then we can't have 100% compliance." I said, "Good. I wish you had 0% compliance." Now, United Way probably does some good things, but I cannot support an organization that supports killing kids. And if you do, I think you need to check your relationship with God. Something is a little shaky someplace, okay? This textbook says, you have an appendix that is vestigial. You don't need it anymore. I'm sorry, folks. You do need your appendix, okay? This is lie number 13. There are no vestigial organs. The appendix is part of your immune system. If your appendix is taken out, it will shorten your life, probably because you'll have a higher susceptibility for leukemia, Hodgkin's disease, cancer of the colon, cancer of the ovaries. Now, it is true you can live without your appendix, okay? You can live without both your legs and both your arms also. That doesn't prove you don't need it. There aren't any vestigial organs. And even if there were, that's the opposite of evolution. That's losing, not gaining. Is that how evolution works? You lose everything until you have it all? Oh, I don't get it. This textbook says the whale has a vestigial pelvis. That's not a vestigial pelvis. This book for little bitty kids says, just imagine whales walking around. It's true. What are they talking about here? They're talking about those little bitty bones right there on the whale. Yep, I can see them walking around, can't you? That's not a vestigial pelvis. This guy says the same thing. The whale's pelvis is evidence of its evolution from four-legged land-dwelling mammals. I'm sorry, folks. That is not a vestigial pelvis. That is a lie. Those bones are necessary for muscles to attach to so that the whale can reproduce. It has nothing to do with walking on land. It has to do with getting more baby whales. That's not a vestigial pelvis. This one says, humans have a tailbone that is of no apparent use. I was in North Alabama debating against the president of the North Alabama Atheist Association, or something like that. I forget his title. He got up and he said, now folks, we have evidence for evolution. Humans have a tailbone they no longer need. When it was my turn, I got up and I said, Mr. Patterson, I taught biology and anatomy. I happen to know there are 9 little muscles that attach to the tailbone, without which you cannot perform some very valuable functions. I will not tell you what they all are, but trust me, you need those muscles. I said, now, if you think the tailbone is vestigial, I, Kent Hovind, will pay right now to have yours removed. Bend over. Folks, that is a lie. That is not. There are no vestigial tailbones. That simply is baloney. This textbook says the coccyx, that's the tailbone, is a small bone at the end of the human vertebral column. It has no present function and is the remainder of bones that once occupied the long tail of a tree-living ancestor. They told me when I went to school, man used to have a tail, but he lost it because he didn't need it. I thought, didn't need it? Have you ever thought how handy a tail would be? Have you ever come to the door with 2 sacks of groceries? Wouldn't that be nice to be able to open that door and walk right in there? Lost it because we didn't need it. It'd be tougher to put your britches on. I understand that, you know. Somebody could figure that out. But that simply is baloney. It's not true. You know, Satan is using this evolution theory to lead folks to hell. Destroy kids' faith in the Bible. Make sure they never get saved. If they do get saved, make sure they never are effective for the Lord. We'll take a little break. When we come back for the next session, we're going to talk about more lies in the textbooks and show you some things you can do about it to fix it in your area. When we come back, more lies in the textbooks. Thank you for joining us. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. My name is Kent Hovind. I taught high school science for 15 years, and now it's been my privilege for 12 years to travel around and speak on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. We're going to continue in this session with what we started in the last session about lies in the textbooks and what you can do about it. I collect public school textbooks. I have hundreds of them, and I read them, believe it or not, and I study them and find out there are things taught in these books that just simply are not true. And we covered quite a few of those last night. We're going to finish up a few more here in this session and then tell you some practical steps of things you can do to fix the problem in your local school. You know, if you see something that is designed, it obviously demands a designer. As far as I know, this is the world's largest rock group. Well, do you know of a bigger one? I like to ask evolutionists the question. Now, fellas, Mount Rushmore has 4 faces on it, faces of 4 different presidents. Do you believe there's any way these faces could have appeared on this rock by chance? Do you think the wind could have done that, or erosion, or thermal expansion of the rock, or maybe exfoliation? You know, what caused these faces to appear on the rock? And they would say, well, obviously it was designed. A guy named Borglum designed it, took him a long time to build it, and there it is today. I agree. It is just obviously designed. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. If you're driving through South Dakota, through the Black Hills, and you see 4 faces on the rock, you don't automatically assume a natural occurrence. You assume a human designer was involved. Now, if you find a complex object, you should conclude there is a designer. But the textbooks don't use that word design very often, if at all. They almost always use the word adapted. Like this one says, the pitcher plant has adaptations to help it get nitrogen. Now, wait a minute. Why don't they say it was designed? This one says gills are an adaptation to living in water. Well, the reason they don't say it's a design feature is because then some kid might say, well, who's the designer? Because design demands a designer. That's just obvious to anybody with half a brain. I have a Casio Databank stopwatch. It holds 300 phone numbers. It is a calculator. It's a stopwatch, an alarm clock, a countdown timer. It does not tell time. I have to look at it. But this really is an amazing machine, okay? $70 at Walmart. The watch is made in Japan. I was in Japan a couple months ago. I did not get to meet the guy who makes the Casio watches. But I would be willing to bet there is somebody over there who designs them. Is it logical for me to stand here in America and say, you know what? I've never seen the designer of this watch, therefore I deny he exists. That's not logical, is it? It is perfectly logical for me to say, even though I've never seen the designer, it is so complicated there must have been a designer. That's perfectly logical to say that. See, when you look at something complicated like a watch, you should conclude 2 things. There is a designer, and he's pretty smart. When you look at something like the world through the telescope or the microscope, and you look at any living cell in the body, you should decide, you know, there is a designer, and he's pretty smart. And God knows the study of science will bring people to a knowledge of the Creator. That's why Satan has worked so hard in the last few hundred years to make sure the study of science turns kids away from the Creator. There's no conflict between science and the Bible. There's a conflict between science and evolution, and there's a conflict between the Bible and evolution, because evolution is not part of science. It's interesting, evolutionists argue against design using arguments that they designed. You ought to think about that one for a while. There's a great book showing how complex things can be. It's called Darwin's Black Box by Michael Behe. He spends an entire chapter in this book describing the hair on a bacteria. Bacteria are pretty tiny. They have a little hair on the back that whips around and makes them swim through their little world. Okay? That little hair on the bacteria is like a complex rotary engine. That hair is so tiny that the motor is so tiny that 8 million of them would fit in the cross-section of an average human hair. And yet that motor turns 100,000 RPM forward or backward. I've had 111 cars, I believe, since I started, at 70-some motorcycles. Never had a new one, never had a new car. Always get a clunker and have to fix it up. My daddy taught us boys how to work on cars. I can do just about anything to a car. But I can't imagine building a motor so tiny that 8 million of them would fit in the cross-section of a human hair. Especially building a motor that'll turn 100,000 RPM. Can you imagine what that would require? Talk about precision. And yet some people want us to believe this evolved by chance. Look, it had to be designed. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. There must have been a designer. And you know, the bacteria swims through his little world using that little hair as a propeller. He swims the equivalent of a human swimming 60 miles an hour. Now, the other problem is, as you get smaller, the viscosity becomes greater. So the fluid he's going through, to him, feels like you swimming through peanut butter. Can you imagine swimming through peanut butter at 60 miles an hour? And yet the textbook says humans evolved from bacteria. Man, if they can swim 60 miles an hour, we need to sign them up for the Olympics. If we evolved from bacteria, we're getting worse, not better. So lie number 16 of the lies we've been covering in the textbooks, there's no evidence that bacteria turn to humans. There's no evidence that any animal has ever produced a different kind of animal. Bacteria always produce bacteria. Now, Charles Darwin said something interesting in his book. In this book, right here, Charlie Darwin said, on page 217, he said, to suppose that the eye, the human eyeball, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. Did you know eyeballs are real complicated? But then Charlie goes on for the next 2 pages and says, but it must have done it because, after all, they're here. It must have evolved because we have them. I mean, that's his kind of logic, okay? Now, this textbook says, the complex structure of the human eye may be the product of millions of years of evolution. Why doesn't God get the glory for what he made? You know, eyeballs are pretty complicated. This textbook says, boys and girls, right here, you can better understand how the eye might have evolved if you can picture a series of changes. Notice what they just did to the kids here. Here we are in a science textbook telling the students you have to imagine how something happened. That takes it outside the field of science. See, evolution is based on imagination. Science is not. Science is things that we can observe and test and demonstrate. Imagining how the eye might have evolved is not science. That's somebody's religion. Did you know the Bible says God formed the eye? And eyeballs are incredibly complicated. At the back of your eyeball, you have 1 square inch called the retina, yet it has 137 million light-sensitive cells. How would you like to be the electrician to wire that up? 137 million connections in 1 square inch. Anybody want to tackle that job? My Heavenly Father did it. He's pretty smart, ain't he? I was sitting in the office one day and the phone rang. Boy, you never know what you're going to get when the phone rings at my place. I said, hello, Creation Science. This is Brother Hovind. The voice on the other end said, how can you be so stupid as to believe in creation? I said, excuse me? He said, how can you be so dumb as to believe in creation? I said, what's my other choice? He said, evolution. I said, why would I believe in that? He said, well, because everything in the world is poorly designed. I said, like what? He said, like the human eyeball, it's a poor design. I said, what are you talking about? He said, don't you know the blood vessels are in front of the retina, which means the light comes into the eye through the blood vessels to hit the retina, and the blood vessels block some of the light. He said, that's a poor design. He said, a freshman engineer in college could figure that out. He said, the octopus has a much better eye because their blood vessels are behind the retina. So their eye is designed much better than the human eye. I said, sir, I don't know who you are or where you're calling from, but let me explain something to you. We live in the air. Air is a very poor insulator for UV light. UV light destroys your eyeball. You need the blood vessels in front of your retina because that's the body's last defense against ultraviolet light. Now, octopus live in the water. Water stops UV light. So they can have the blood vessels behind, which gives them better vision in the deep ocean than you would have. However, you don't live in the deep ocean. You live in the air. And air doesn't block UV light very well. I said, now, if you want to swap eyes with an octopus, you just have at it. But you will be blind in a couple of days. We are perfectly designed for living in the air. Do you have any other dumb questions? He said, no, that was it. Click. What they're trying to say is, I don't think this is designed properly, therefore it must have evolved. Well, first place, maybe you don't know why it's designed that way. Maybe there really is a reason. And secondly, that's a lousy argument for evolution. Even if there are bad designs, that's not an argument for evolution. Not at all. When you consider the fact that you are a copy off 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 a copy of Adam, the fact that we can even see and move at all is pretty amazing. Right? So what about the origin of life? How did life get started? This textbook tells the students, in the 1950s, Urey and Miller wanted to know how the universe and how the solar system and Earth had come to be. They took a mixture of Earth's primitive atmosphere. Ooh, now we got a problem here. We'll show you in a minute. It says, although he never proved how life originated, he did add evidence to the theory that life could have started by itself on the primitive Earth. Well, it's very unfortunate that students are taught this kind of stuff. Let's just learn the truth about what really happened. Here's a textbook that says, swirling in the waters of the oceans is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Progress from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. Well, I guess it is. It doesn't even happen. It's totally stopped. That's how slow it is. This fellow confesses in the encyclopedia. He says, the origin of species was not addressed in 1859, even though that's the title of the book. And it's still a mystery in 1998. Both the origin of life and the origin of major groups of animals remains unknown. Nobody knows how life could get started. But their students are always shown this picture. This is one of the icons to make them believe in evolution. This is a great book that we have here. You can get it through our ministry, The Icons of Evolution. Different things that are used in just about every textbook to try to make the kids believe in this theory. Fascinating book. It's 15 of the major icons and says, look, folks, here's the truth about it. And the picture of Miller and Urey standing by those glass tubes with the gas going through is always one of the icons that's used to support evolution. Students are taught that life evolved from non-living materials. This textbook says, many important events occurred during the Archean era, the most important of which was the evolution of life. Progress from complex molecules to even the simplest living organism was a very long process. I guess it was. It didn't even happen. This one says, the first living cells emerged between 4 billion and 3.8 billion years ago. There is no record of the event. But you expect the kids to believe in it and be tested on it, right? That's not part of science. This one says, the first self-replicating systems must have emerged in this organic soup. That is lie number 18, folks. There is no evidence that we came from soup and that life came from non-living material. There is no evidence for this at all. Let me tell you what really happened. Miller took some gases. He took methane, ammonia, water vapor, and hydrogen, and he circulated them through some glass tubes, and one of the chambers in the system had a spark. That was supposed to simulate lightning strikes in the primitive ocean. When it got to the bottom, there was a trap to drain off anything that formed. In case it made something, they would drain it off because they didn't want it to go through again because the spark would destroy whatever was created. Now, putting a trap in the system to drain off the red goo at the bottom is not realistic to what might have happened in the ocean at all, okay? But what they had, this textbook says, about the time Miller discovered that a red goo at the bottom of his flask was rich in amino acids. Now, wait a minute. Rich in amino acids? That's lie number 19. It was not rich in amino acids. No one has made life. They didn't even come close. What they made was poisonous to life. Here's what happened. They took these gases and circulated them through the tubes. Now, he excluded oxygen on purpose because he knew oxygen would destroy anything that was formed. So what he had was called a reducing atmosphere, no oxygen. He knew that life could not evolve with oxygen present. So they simply excluded oxygen. The problem with that is ozone is made from oxygen, and ozone blocks UV light. So if you don't have oxygen, you can't have ozone, which means the UV light is going to destroy the ammonia, and that was one of your gases. So you can't get life to evolve with oxygen, and you can't get life to evolve without oxygen. Looks to me like you can't get life to evolve, period. By the way, the Earth has always had oxygen. Even though the geologic column doesn't exist, if you go by their thinking, the lowest layers actually had more oxygen than we have today. Probably 30% oxygen. So the whole Miller experiment is baloney. Second problem, he filtered out the product with that trap at the bottom. That's not realistic for what would happen in nature. What he really made was 85% tar, 13% carboxylic acid. Both of those are toxic to life. 2% of his mixture was amino acids. I would say that is not rich in amino acids. The other problem is, mostly what he made was 2 of the 20 amino acids. It's like making letters of the alphabet and you make a whole bunch of Z's and X's. Well, you can't spell too many things with that. He made a bunch of 2 amino acids. To complicate the problem, the acids will bond, the acid and the tar will bond with the amino acids very quickly. They're not going to bond with each other. See, amino acids are sort of like letters of the alphabet. And what he made was a few letters of the alphabet. It takes a bunch of letters in the right sequence to make words and to make paragraphs and to make books. To make a few letters of the alphabet by random chance and then to claim that you made a book by random chance is 2 very different steps, okay? He made the equivalent of a few letters of the alphabet, and he needed to make a huge dictionary. And half of his amino acids were backwards. See, amino acids have a spin to them, like right-handed and left-handed bolts or nuts. You mechanics have probably had the experience of picking up a left-handed nut trying to put it on a right-handed bolt. It's just not going to work. And half the amino acids were backwards. Well, this really complicates the problem, especially since the smallest proteins we know of have 70 to 100 amino acids, all in the precise order and all left-handed. And the DNA and RNA have all right-handed amino acids. No, he did not make life in the laboratory. There are hundreds of amino acids, and they must combine in the right order to make the proteins. Actually, they unbond in water faster than they bond. And the last anybody checked, the oceans are completely full of water. Brownian motion is going to drive them apart. No, the experiments to make life in the laboratory have been a failure. One student in a University of West Florida here, he stood up in the crowd while I was speaking on creation. We were having question and answer time. And he said, Dr. Hovind, if scientists ever make life in the laboratory, what are you going to say then? Huh? I said, well, in the first place, they are nowhere close to making life in the laboratory. Nowhere close. Secondly, if a bunch of scientists make life in the laboratory, I guess that will prove that it takes intelligence to create life. So you're going to be proving creation, not evolution. Right? Think about it. They somehow get this idea that, all we need to do is get the chemicals together and add energy, and poof, life will form. Well, if you think that's the way it works, then let's do an experiment. We're going to put a frog in a blender and turn it on. In a matter of a few moments, you will have frog nog. Now, I want you to add energy to the frog nog, okay? I want you to nuke it, microwave it, blend it for a zillion years, put the jumper cables to it. I mean, you do whatever you want. Add all the energy you like to your frog nog. How long will it take to reassemble the frog? Don't you have all the molecules to make a frog in one place? Sure you do. But you can't put it back together and make a frog, can you? No, folks. Adding energy doesn't help. So what about these trees of life the textbooks talk about? They typically will show the students how that bacteria slowly evolved to humans over billions of years, and they arrange it in a tree. Now, these trees of life are nonsense. And even Mary Leakey knows that, okay? And she believes in evolution. She says these trees are nothing but nonsense. Stephen Gould, the communist professor at Harvard University, says the evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference. That means they infer, they hope, they guess, they think it might have happened. However reasonable, not the evidence of fossils. They just make up these trees, folks. Look at this textbook says, all the many forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor. found in a population of primitive unicellular organisms. Now, hold it. There's no such thing as a primitive unicellular organism. But they show the kids that we evolved from something other than we are today, and nobody's ever seen any animal produce a different kind of animal. This one says the humans, the birds, and the crocodiles had a common ancestor. Isn't that what that tree is supposed to represent to the kids? Don't you think a kid going through science class is going to come out looking at that saying, wow, it's true, it's in a book, it must be true. That is pure nonsense, folks. These trees are based on imagination, not on science. Nobody's got any evidence that any animal has ever produced a different kind of animal. And anybody that teaches that kind of stuff to their kids in school better read what Jesus said. Whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Any of you that are teaching evolution to a bunch of kids and destroying their faith in the Scripture, you are in trouble when you face God. Mark my words. Okay, judgment is coming. Then they somehow get this idea that if something is smaller, it is simpler. They talk about a simple life form. Look, a small creature like a paramecium is not simple. You can put thousands of these into a drop of water, and yet each one is more complicated than a space shuttle. And the space shuttle is the most complex machine ever built by man. Smaller is not simpler, it is more complex. So lie number 21, they tell the kids that if it's smaller, it is simpler. That's simply not true. Here's a microchip inside a paper clip. That's not simple. That's complicated. Matter of fact, here's an ant holding a microchip. This microchip in the ant's mouth is capable of processing every letter of the Bible 200 times in 1 second. Smaller is more complicated. I'll show you. Let's compare the Cray computer, which at one time was the world's largest, fastest computer, the YMPC-90. We're going to compare it to a brain of a honeybee. We would all agree that the Cray computer is huge. The brain of a honeybee is tiny. Have I lost anybody so far? Okay. Did you know the Cray computer processed 6 billion calculations per second? Estimates are that the honeybee's brain, which is not only keeping track of where he's going, it's also keeping track of flight. Anybody that flies an airplane, brother, you know how it is. There's a lot of things to keep track of when you're flying an airplane, right? He has to fly, plus run his digestive system, plus keep his heart beating to keep the juices circulating, plus he's got to keep track of where he's going. He's got a lot of things going on in that brain. Estimates are that his brain is processing about 1 trillion calculations per second. That's 1,000 billion. So the honeybee's brain is probably 166 times faster than a Cray computer. Now, the Cray computer uses many megawatts. The honeybee only uses 10 microwatts. What that means is the honeybee is very efficient. Matter of fact, he is so efficient, he can fly 1,000,000 miles on 1 gallon of honey. Let me see you invent a machine that gets 1,000,000 miles per gallon. My Heavenly Father did. He's pretty smart, ain't he? Let's see, the Cray used to cost $48 million. Honeybee's brain is pretty cheap. You splat them on your windshield all the time. Many people scramble when the Cray breaks down. Nobody heals the honeybee. A self-healing computer. How would you like one of those? The Cray weighed 2,300 pounds. Honeybee's brain doesn't weigh very much. Let's see, what conclusions can we draw here? The supercomputer is huge, it is slow, it is inefficient, it costs lots of money, it must be maintained, it had to be designed. There isn't anybody with half a brain who would tell you that the Cray came from an explosion in an electronics factory. Right? And yet they turn right around and say the human brain evolved. Look, your brain's a lot more complex than a honeybee. It's been said a person can walk into a room and look around the room, and in 1 second, your brain processes enough information to keep the Cray computer busy for 100 years analyzing it. Your brain does that in 1 second. We are amazingly built. By the way, the human brain has not only more memory capacity, it has computational power, bits per second. We're at the top, folks. We have more memory capacity and computational power than the entire national phone system. They say, well, how many have ever done electrical work, hooking up electrical appliances or, wiring houses, okay? My dad was electrical engineer at Caterpillar Tractor Company. He taught us boys all about electricity when we were a little bitty. So we've built a bunch of houses, always did our own wiring, stuff like that. It's been said there are more connections in one human brain than all of the connections that have ever been made in the history of humanity. How many wires have been connected together? Soldered, crimped, twist-locked? You got more connections in your brain than all the connections in the world. That's a lot. Incredibly complicated the human brain is. Now, if you want to believe it happened by chance, that's perfectly fine, but that's not logical. One professor, I asked him the question, I said, "Sir, do you think your brain is just 3 pounds of chemicals that got together by chance over billions of years?" He said, "Yes, I do." I said, "Well, then how can you trust your thoughts and the reasoning processes and the conclusions you come to? Maybe you've got a chemical in there backwards." He did, by the way, several, I believe. But then they're going to tell the kids that DNA proves evolution. Now, just hold on a minute. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. This textbook says we have evidence from molecular biology. Ooh, big word. That sounds impressive. Do they really have evidence of evolution from molecular biology? This college textbook says Darwin speculated that all forms of life are related. This speculation has been verified. Now, that is simply a lie, folks. They have not verified that all life forms have a common ancestor. And DNA is incredibly complicated. Did you know the DNA, the chromosomes in your body, is the most complicated molecule in the universe? No molecule is more complex than a DNA. And the average person in this room has 50 trillion cells in their body. Each of those cells contains 46 chromosomes, except for the gametes, they've got 23. And if you took all the chromosomes out of your body, it would fill 2 tablespoons. And yet if you tied them end to end and stretched those incredibly complicated chromosomes out, if they were all stretched out, tied end to end, one person's chromosomes would reach from Earth to the moon and back 5 million round trips to the moon out of 2 tablespoons. Pretty complicated. The code in the chromosomes is more complex and holds more information than all the computer programs ever written by man combined. And it fits into 2 tablespoons. Bill Gates said the DNA is like a software program, but it's much more complex than anything we've been able to design. You know, the DNA is unbelievably complicated. If you typed out the code found in your DNA, when you got done typing, you'd have enough books to fill Grand Canyon 40 times. Anybody work with computers at all? I want to see you get 40 Grand Canyons full of books, condense it to software, CD-ROM, PK-ZIP, SciQuest, I don't care what you use. When you get done, it must fit into 2 tablespoons. Anybody want to tackle that project? My Heavenly Father did it just like that. He spoke it into existence. Boy, he's pretty smart. King David said, "I will praise thee, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made." And he didn't even have a microscope, and he could figure it out. You know, from conception to birth, the baby adds 15,000 cells per minute to its body. Each of those cells more complex than a space shuttle. How would you like to be responsible for supplying the assembly line that was putting together 15,000 space shuttles a minute for 9 months? How'd you like to make sure they have enough nuts and bolts and screws and, parts? Some of you women are saying, "I did it once, man, and it's hard." One lady said, "I did it 8 times. It didn't get any easier any time." Folks, it's incredibly complicated, especially when you consider the chances of one DNA happening by chance have been calculated to be 1 times 10 to the 119,000th power. That's a pretty big number when you consider the visible universe is 10 to the 28 inches in diameter. It's just not going to happen. Now, if evolution is true, then I thought, hey, the more chromosomes you have, the more complex you must be, so you must have evolved farther. So I made a chart of different plants and animals based upon their chromosome number. I discovered penicillin has only 2 chromosomes. So it must have evolved first. That must be the simplest life form. And then slowly, over millions of years, it evolved some more chromosomes and turned into a fruit fly. They have 8 chromosomes. And slowly we got tomatoes. They have 12. By the way, so do houseflies. Identical twins, Pretty hard to tell the difference between a tomato and a housefly. And then very slowly they evolved some more chromosomes and became a pea. And then very slowly it got 2 more chromosomes and turned into a bee. Now here you can see the similarity. P, B, very similar. And then slowly, over millions of years, it evolved until we had triplets. Did you know the possum, the redwood tree, and the kidney bean all have 22 chromosomes? The average scientist cannot tell them apart. Let's see, which one is which here? Let me think here. Tree, possum, kidney bean. I think I got them right. And then today, we have evolved far enough that we now have 46. And if we can just get 2 more, we're going to be a tobacco plant. I know some that already smell like it. Sometimes I'll get on the elevator and I'll say, man, you're evolving. You're way ahead of me. How did you do that? And someday, I'm sure it won't happen in my lifetime, but we might someday get enough chromosomes to be a carp. By the way, dog and chicken are twins, you know. And someday in the far distant future, we might have enough chromosomes to be a fern. I was at a church one time. A lady walked up to me after church and said, Mr. Hovind, I'm fern. I shook hands with that hand right there. I'll never wash it again. They tell the kids, though, that the percentage of DNA similarity proves we're related. Here's the textbook says, boys and girls, humans and orangutans are 96% similar. That proves a common ancestor 15 million years ago. Now, just hold on a minute. Similar DNA codes prove the same engineers wrote the codes. Did you know Microsoft PowerPoint and Microsoft Word and all the Microsoft programs have lots of similarities? I mean, when you hit spell check in PowerPoint, it's the exact same program as when you hit spell check in Microsoft Word. And if you compared all the lines of code, I think you'd find there are millions of similarities. Does that prove both of those programs evolved from Morse code by themselves? Or does that prove the same engineers are writing the codes? Similar DNA proves the same engineer wrote the codes, folks. But they tell the students to think critically. Here we go again with this critical thinking. Now watch this here. Number 26. As you learned in Chapter 2, all living things make proteins from the same 20 kinds of amino acids. That's true. Explain how this fact, that's a good fact, supports the idea that all life forms shared a common ancestor. No. That's like saying, you know, all books written in English have the same 26 letters. There's only 26 letters in the alphabet, folks. And you can compare all the books in the libraries and find those same 26 letters in all of them. Wow. Does that prove they evolved from each other? No. That's the code to write in English, okay? And 20 amino acids is the code to write living things. And God did it that way, I suspect, because He wants to make sure that the brown cow can eat the green grass and digest it into white milk. And I can drink the white milk and get the blonde hair. See, we're all made from the same 20 amino acids. Otherwise, we couldn't digest anything else. That really was thinking ahead on the Creator's part, you know. See, if everyone had a different code, we could only eat other humans. That wouldn't last long. See, that's lie number 23, folks. This shows a common creator, not a common ancestor. Similar structures nearly always have similar plans. Similar bridges have similar blueprints. This hardly constitutes evidence that one sired the other or that they were erected by tornadoes, just because they have a similar blueprint. You know, the lug nuts from a Chevy will fit on a Pontiac. Similar design. Does that prove they both evolved from a Honda 18 million years ago? No. Same guys designed them. That's what it proved. Now, man has a pretty good understanding of cars. I've had lots of cars. I don't get time to work on them anymore, but I know how. If you understand how a car works, does that prove nobody designed it? I mean, even if you studied the car completely till you thoroughly understood every nut and bolt, that still doesn't prove nobody designed it, does it? Understanding the operation of a car or a machine does not at all explain the origin of the machine. And even if we study the human body and thoroughly understand it, and nobody does, by the way, but if we did, that still wouldn't take away the designer. There still has to be a designer. When my son, who's running that camera right there, turned 16, he got his driver's license. Suppose your kid turns 16. He gets his license. He says, hey, Dad, I got my license. Wow, son, you're 16. You made it. We didn't think you would, but you did. He says, hey, Dad, can I borrow the car? Well, son, listen, your mom and I knew this day was coming. The car's pretty complicated, son. Did you know there are 3,000 bolts required to hold a car together, and one nut can scatter it all over the highway? Son, we don't think you're ready for the whole car. You know, you don't understand the whole thing. So this year we decided we're going to let you use 10% of the car. Next year, maybe another 10%. What good is 10% of a car? That's what you put in a junkyard, isn't it? Now, what good is 10% of an eyeball or a feather or a wing or a beak or any complex structure? Hey, how many things have to be right on your car to make it work? Thousands of things, right? How many things have to be wrong to make it stop working? Any one of many thousands of things, right? One wire in the wrong place, right? Doesn't take much to make it quit working, does it? And anything in the human body is a lot more complicated than a car. So these DNA sequences are not evidence for evolution. They are evidence for design. Even experts will tell you we have no direct access to the process of evolution using DNA. It's only by creative imagination, especially when you consider that probably less than 1% of human DNA has been thoroughly analyzed. Even if 99% of that 1% was similar to chimps, that still wouldn't prove any relationship. It would prove a common designer. Chimps and humans have millions of differences, by the way. We could spend a long time on that. However, if you think percentage of similarity proves something, let me show you the research I've been doing. I'm a research scientist, you know. I've been doing research on the similarity of various objects based upon their water content. I discovered in my research that clouds are 100% water. Watermelons are 97% water. Only 3% difference. That proves they had a common ancestor 19.6 million years ago. Not only that, I discovered jellyfish are 98% water. Ooh, the missing link. And so are snow cones. They're 98% water too. They're identical twins. Take a bite out of them. You can't tell the difference. Somehow they get around to telling our kids that fossils have evidence for evolution. Like this one says, we have evidence from fossils for evolution. Now just hold on a minute. No, we don't. That is lie number 24. There is no fossil evidence for evolution. None. Darwin said in his book, if my theory be true, numberless intermediate varieties must assuredly have existed. Oh, you're right about that, Charlie. You know, to change from a rock to a human takes an awful lot of intermediate varieties. But look what the experts say. David Ropp is a strong believer in evolution. He said in the years after Darwin, his advocates hoped to find predictable progressions. In general, these have not been found, yet the optimism has died hard and some pure fantasy has crept into textbooks. Oh, you're kidding. Fantasy in the textbooks? Oh, yes, ma'am. I mean, pure fantasy. See, if you find a fossil in the dirt, you don't know that it had any kids. All you know is it died. You're not even sure where it died. You just know where it ended up, right? You find a fossil in the dirt, you don't know that it had any kids, and you sure don't know that it had different kids. And why would they think fossils in the dirt can do something animals today cannot do? Animals today cannot produce anything other than their kind. Why do we think the fossils could do it? How come it can happen long ago and far away and it can't happen today? Luther Sunderland wrote letters or went and visited all the major museums or wrote letters to the directors, and he said, where's the evidence for evolution? He wrote a letter to Colin Patterson, who's got the largest fossil collection in the world at the British Museum of Natural History. He said, Mr. Patterson, I read your book about evolution, but I noticed you didn't show us any missing links. Why not? Patterson wrote back and said, I fully agree with your comments on the lack of evolutionary transitions in my book. If I knew of any, fossil or living, I would certainly have included them. I will lay it on the line. There is not one such fossil. There aren't any missing links, folks. The whole chain is missing. It's not just a link they're looking for. And even guys like Stephen Gould will say, the absence of fossil evidence has been a nagging problem for evolution, but he believes in it anyway. It doesn't diminish his faith any. He just says we haven't found the evidence. So he and other fellows have come up with a theory called punctuated equilibrium. This is just really a resurrected Goldschmidt theory, who said the first bird hatched from a reptilian egg. What? Here's what they say with this theory. The theory says, you know, we don't find any evidence for gradual change, therefore evolution must have happened quickly. See, in their mind, there's only two choices. Evolution happens slowly, like Darwin said, or evolution happened quickly, in leaps or jumps or saltations, they call it. Well, now, wait a minute. There's another choice. Maybe it didn't happen at all. Oh, they don't want to consider that possibility. So they think either it happened slowly or it happened quickly. And since we don't find evidence for it happening slowly, therefore it must have happened quickly. That's not science. You see, evolution is a shell game. You ever seen that game where they put the pea under the shells and they try to get you confused? That's what evolution is. The geologist thinks that the biologist has the evidence. The biologist says, oh no, we don't have it, the anthropologist has it. And it's a shell game, but there's no pea under any of them, folks. Nobody has the evidence. I can show you. If there's some real evidence for macroevolution or evolutionary changes above the microevolutionary level, we've been offering for nearly 10 years now a reward. We will pay $250,000 for evidence for evolution. Check my website, drdino.com, D-R-D-I-N-O, and you can see. Several folks have sent in stuff. They say, we've got proof for evolution. One guy said, I can prove it. I said, okay, what do you have? He said, I'm working in the laboratory, and we've produced soybean plants that are resistant to frost. I said, man, that is good, and that will be handy. What did you start with? He said, a soybean plant. I said, what do you have now? He said, a soybean plant. I said, sorry, that's not evolution. That's the same kind of plant. I mean, stand back and look at this, folks, okay? There is no evidence. They're going to tell the kids in the textbooks, we've got evidence from the horse evolving. They will show the kids a four-toed horse slowly evolving to a one-toed horse. Now, that is simply a lie, folks, okay? The horse evolution has been proven wrong many years ago. What they do not tell the kids in the textbooks is that the original so-called horse is still alive today. It's a meat-eating animal about the size of a fox, and it's got sharp teeth. It is not related to a horse at all. It had 18 pairs of ribs. The next one has 15. The next one has 19. And then you go back to 18 pairs of ribs. Something is very different here. But they put this in the textbooks as if it is proven to be a fact. And it's not. By the way, there's quite a variety of horse sizes today, don't you know? And the experts will tell you the other examples, like the much repeated gradual evolution of the modern horse, have not held up under close examination. What that means is, it's not true. George Simpson, G.G. Simpson said, many examples commonly cited, such as the evolution of the horse family or the saber-toothed tigers, can be readily shown to have been unintentionally falsified and not to be really orthogenetic. He said this back in 1950. 50 years ago, it was proven the horse evolution is not true. But it's still in textbooks today used in your town. I know it takes a while to get textbooks up to date, but 50 years is plenty of time. Cut that page out of the book. We'll give you some ideas later, practical ways to fix this, but the horse evolution was made up by Othniel Marsh back in 1874. He picked animals from all over the world. He didn't find them in that order anyplace. Modern horses are found with and lower than the so-called ancient horses. So it's a moot point. They're already there. The ancient horse is still alive today, folks. It's just like the hyrax alive in Turkey and East Africa right now. The number of ribs, the number of toes, the looks at the toes and the teeth are very different. In South America, the fossils are in reverse order. You find the one-toed horse on the bottom and the three-toed horse on top. Well, why did it evolve backwards? They're never found in the order presented, and the three-toed and one-toed horses grazed side by side. One is not the ancestor to the other. They're just different kinds of animals, that's all. The Tulsa Zoo finally took their horse evolution display down because so many folks complained that this is a lie. And why does the zoo feel like they've got to teach evolution anyway? Does the Gulf Breeze Zoo have displays about evolution? Why? Why don't they just show the kids the animals? Especially if this is taxpayer funded. I think those who believe in evolution ought to pay to spread their religion at their own expense, not at everybody else's expense. Harvard University still has the horse evolution on display, proven wrong 50 years ago. I stood there at Peabody Museum and watched as hundreds of kids came through and saw this display and were never told one word that it was wrong. I've been there many times to the Peabody Museum, And it just breaks my heart. Why doesn't somebody stand outside that museum and hand out a copy of a videotape or a book or something to every kid that comes through and say, kid, you just got lied to. There is no evidence for evolution. See, arranging something in order doesn't prove it happened. And they're not even found in that order. So arranging things artificially does not prove a relationship. See, if I get buried on top of a hamster, does that prove he's my grandpa? Oh, he's lower than me. It doesn't prove a thing, does it? I've been piecing together evidence for evolution for many years. I've taken fragmentary evidence, and I've been able to actually reconstruct the evolution of the fork. After long hours of research on this topic, I found many mutants that, of course, did not survive the process as they slowly evolved, but I believe sincerely that the knife evolved first, and then it slowly turned into a spoon. Great geological pressures squeezed it, dished it out, concave one side, convex on the other, and turned it into a spoon. Then slowly erosion cut grooves into the end, made it a short-tined fork. And over millions of years, the grooves got longer and wider, and it became a long-tined fork. I knew I had the right order, but I felt like I had a missing link, particularly between spoons and forks. See, spoons are rounded and have no grooves. Forks are squared and grooves. Two jumps in one. Even punctuated equilibrium can't do that. So I knew there must be a missing link in here, but I couldn't find it. Till one day I was flying to Connecticut. I was 30,000 feet off the ground. The stewardess came down the aisle and handed me the missing link. I don't think she knew what she had. But my trained scientific eye picked it up right away. I said, wow, this is it. Man. I stuck it in my pocket. Later that day, we went to get some chicken at the restaurant, and I found another one. There they are, folks, the missing links. So the evolution of silverware is nearly complete, which means I probably need a government grant to finish the research on this. Another $30 or $40 million ought to do it. I'd probably get it, wouldn't I, if I applied for it. Many frauds says this is an obvious fork head on a spoon handle. But see, when you're trained in this theory, in this field, you can catch the frauds right away. Somebody tried to slip that one in on me. I said, no, I'm not buying this at all. Look, you can arrange words in order and turn a cat to a dot to a cot to a dot to a dog, changing one letter at a time. You play around for a while, you turn yourself into a fool. That's what's going to happen. Now they're telling the kids dinosaurs turned to birds. Look at this news article. Dinosaurs are alive as birds, scientist says. Oh, wow, that makes it official, doesn't it? That's absurd, and that is a lie. Dinosaurs did not turn to birds. 1999, October 15th, they ran an article that said, we found the missing link. Boy, it was in the news all over the world. Breaking news, National Geographic, October 99, missing link discovered. Oops, January 2000. Sorry, folks, we made a mistake. It was not a missing link. It was a mistake. It was a fraud, actually. We got plenty of material on that, but this one says dinosaurs, or birds, are the descendants of dinosaurs. Well, now, kids, in case you don't know, there are a few differences between a dinosaur and a bird. You don't just put a few feathers on him and say, come on, man, give it a try. It won't hurt too bad. It's just not going to work like that, okay? See, reptiles have 4 perfectly good legs. Birds have 2 legs and 2 wings, which means if his front legs are going to turn to wings, somewhere along the line, they're going to be half leg, half wing, aren't they? Which means now he can't run and he can't fly. He's got a real problem. Who's going to feed him while he transitions? This is pure baloney. But the textbooks still keep teaching it. Yes, boys and girls, Archaeopteryx is proof that dinosaurs turned to birds. Well, just hold on a minute. Archaeopteryx is a bird, folks. It's a perching bird. And no amount of paleobabble is going to change that. And Alan Fiducia is one of the world's authority on birds at UNC Chapel Hill. He says it's just a bird. See, Archaeopteryx means ancient wing. And they're going to say Archaeopteryx had claws on his wings. Boy, you're right. He sure does. And they'll say, see, that proves he used to be a dinosaur. No. Quite a few birds today still have claws on their wings, okay? The swans do, ibis does. About 12 different birds have claws on their wings. The Hoatzin does. That doesn't prove it used to be a dinosaur. They're going to say, well, he's got teeth in his beak. No, that's unusual, all right. Most birds don't have teeth. Some do. You know, some reptiles have teeth, some don't. Some fish have teeth, some don't. Some mammals have teeth, some don't. Some of you have teeth, some don't, okay? It doesn't prove it used to be a dinosaur. And by the way, going from teeth to no teeth is losing, not gaining. That would be backwards evolution, wouldn't it? Then they're going to say, bird feathers evolved from the same scales that protected dinosaurs so well. Now just hold on a minute. Feathers turn to scales? Or scales turn to feathers? I'm sorry. Feathers are incredibly complicated. Now it is true that feathers and scales are both made of the same protein. It's called keratin. That doesn't prove they're related. Battleships and tin cans are both made out of the same metal too. It's called iron. That doesn't prove one evolved from the other, does it? Somebody's using the same material to design different objects. And God used keratin to design lots of different things. Hair, fingernails, scales, feathers. It's just proof there's a designer using the same material. That's what it's proof of. And by the way, feathers are considered homologous with reptilian scales. However, they are unique. They're not similar to a scale at all. And birds and reptiles have very different lung systems. Their lungs are totally different. And birds, just like today, were already alive before Archaeopteryx ever got here. Here's a bird 130 million years old. Now, I don't buy their time frame at all, but if you find a bird in a rock 130 million years old by your thinking, then you can't have a bird coming along later. That's a transition. Here's a bird supposed to be 140 million years old, much older than Archaeopteryx from Science News. Fossil remains of a bird 142 million years old. And it's a fully formed bird. There are plenty of other reasons to refute the dinosaur-bird connection, says Fiducia. How do you derive birds from a heavy earthbound bipedal reptile that has a deep body, a heavy balancing tail, and 4 shortened limbs? He said, biophysically, it's impossible. But they believe it happened anyway. The problems are multitude. We'll just go through them quickly here. The lungs are totally different. Modern birds are already alive when Archaeopteryx was here, even by their twisted geological thinking. Scales and feathers attach to the body differently, and they develop from different genes on the chromosomes. Birds have a 4-chambered heart. Most reptiles have a 3-chambered heart. Birds lay a leathery egg. Reptiles lay a leathery egg. Birds lay a hard-shelled egg. The tail is different. The hips are different. The reproductive system is different. I'm sorry, there is no fossil evidence of how reptiles change to birds. So kids, don't let them tell you there is. There just simply is no fossil evidence at all. So who is right anyway? This fellow says, Richard Dawkins, who hates creationists, he says, it is absolutely safe to say if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked. Well, he's real open-minded, isn't he? In other words, if you don't believe like me, you're stupid. Sir Arthur Keith, who wrote the foreword when Darwin's book was republished, he wrote the 100-year anniversary foreword to the book. Arthur Keith said, evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it because the only alternative is special creation. And that is unthinkable. Evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. The theory has helped nothing in the progress of science. It is useless. Boy, now that's quite a quote. Evolution is not only useless, folks, it's dangerous. Malcolm Muggeridge said, I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it has been applied, will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future. People are going to laugh at you for believing in that theory 20 years from now, or however long it takes, because it is a silly theory. Scientists who go about teaching evolution as a fact of life are great con men. The story they are teaching may be the greatest hoax ever. In explaining evolution, we do not have one iota of fact. This fellow said, evolution is a general postulate to which all theories, all hypotheses must henceforth bow in order to be thinkable and true. Evolution is a light which illuminates all facts. This is a Catholic priest. He's the guy who sold the Catholics on evolution. And by the way, 3 different times the Pope has accepted evolution and says, well, it must be true, so we've got to make our teaching fit with it. My Bible says God's Word is a light. Evolution is not a light to illuminate all facts. But by the time a kid gets going through 12 to 16 years of school studying this stuff out of these books, he's likely to believe in it. 75% of the kids that go from Christian homes to public schools lose their faith after 1 year of college. 75%. Hey, if a kid goes 12 to 16 years in your school How's his faith going to be? Here we are in the middle of the Bible Belt. Well, I'm convinced the Bible Belt needs to be belted with the Bible a time or two. So why do people believe this theory anyway? Well, some believe it because that's all they've ever been taught. They simply don't know any better. When I spoke in Ukraine, former Soviet Union, I was speaking at a university over there. There were 30 professors that came in the room and heard me speak for 2 hours on creation and evolution. After 1 hour, one of the professors was crying. I asked the interpreter, I said, what's he crying about? And she said, well, he's never heard the creation story. He didn't know there was one. He's so excited, he wants you to keep going. Never heard of creation. A professor at the university. I think we got the same problem in America. We got an awful lot of folks that simply have never heard the other side. All they've ever heard is evolution. Here's a Russian textbook. Guess what? They use the same stories over there that they use over here. Same lies to support evolution. Some people believe in evolution because their job depends upon it. They don't want to give up that job, of course. Some believe it because they hope there's no God to answer to. Some believe it because they have social political reasons. You see, evolution is the foundation for communism, socialism, Marxism, Nazism, the New World Order. We cover that on the next video. Some believe in evolution because they simply have too much pride to admit they are wrong. The Bible says God will give them strong delusion. And if you really honestly, sincerely believe that you came from a rock, you are deluded. This is strong delusion. And you ought to pray for God to have mercy on your soul. You have been deluded. Okay, here we are teaching evolution to our kids. What should we do about it? What are some practical steps? The Bible says, ye are the salt of the earth. Now, salt does lots of things. Salt flavors. Salt irritates. If nobody's irritated at you, you're probably not a very good Christian. You don't have to try to irritate anybody. You just try to be salty. That will irritate them. Salt preserves. And if there's corruption, your job is to try to get the corruption out. And if every Christian that loved God got the corruption out of his little world of influence, we could turn this thing around, folks. If there are things in your textbooks that are not true, get them out. You bought the book, your district did, demand those pages be removed. You don't have to throw the whole book away, just cut out the bad pages, that's all. Okay, most public school teachers that I know are sincere, dedicated, honest, professional people. My brother's in his 33rd year teaching public school. He led me to the Lord. My mommy retired from teaching public school. She loved the Lord. It's not the teacher's fault, folks. Many teach evolution because that's all they've ever been taught. They simply don't know any better. Many don't know that it's okay to teach creation. It's perfectly fine to teach creation in a public school. There's never been a law against it. So that some people will say, you know, teachers cannot teach creation in public schools. I'm sorry, that is lie number 28. It is perfectly fine to teach creation in a public school. Let me give you the quick history of what's going on here. We've got lots more on this topic on our videotape of our topical series called Teaching a Public School Presentation. We go through all of the laws, all the court cases we can find on this topic, but we'll just give you a quick synopsis here, then we'll quit. In 1800s, up until 1925, creation was taught right from the Bible in the average public school. How many of you, when you were a kid, were taught the Bible in public school? Any of you old-timers out here remember that? When you were taught the Bible in public school, and they prayed in the morning before class? Sure. They did that in my school, and I'm only, I'll be 48 pretty quick here. Then in 1925, Tennessee passed a law that said you cannot teach evolution. Now watch this carefully. The law banned evolution from schools. This is where the big court case came in with the Scopes monkey trial. And at the end of the trial, the teacher who taught evolution, or claimed he did, lost and was fined $100. It was still illegal to teach creation after that trial was over. The evolutionists lost the case. But the ACLU put a spin on this and tried to make it look like they won. And for the next 40 years, most schools taught evolution, even though it was against the law to do so. They still included evolution. 1968, the last law banning evolution was overturned. There's never been a law banning creation. There used to be laws banning evolution from schools. Okay? And today, many teachers feel they cannot teach creation in the Bible or the Bible in their classroom. This is simply not true. subject is dealt with thoroughly on those impact articles you can get from Institute for Creation Research. Some great material there. Louisiana passed a law requiring teachers to teach creation if they taught evolution. It was called balanced treatment. Louisiana said, okay, if you teach evolution, you have to give the same amount of time to creation. Supreme Court struck that down. Said, no, you cannot demand the teachers teach creation. They can teach it if they want, but you cannot force them to teach it. Even Stephen Gould, after the trial was over in 1987, he said, no statute exists in any state to bar instruction in creation science. It could be taught before, and it can be taught now. Evolutionary biologist Michael Zimmerman said, this is after the 1987 court case, he said the Supreme Court ruling did not in any way outlaw the teaching of creation science in public school classrooms. Quite simply, it ruled that in the form taken by the Louisiana law, it is unconstitutional to demand equal time for this particular subject. Creation science can still be brought into classrooms if and when science administrators feel it is appropriate. Numerous surveys have shown that teachers and administrators favor just this route. And in fact, creation science is being taught in science courses throughout the country. Eugenia Scott is the president of the National Center for Science Education in Berkeley, California. The purpose of their organization is to keep creation out of schools. That's why they exist. Here's what she said after the 1987 court case. The Supreme Court decision says only that the Louisiana law violates the constitutional separation of church and state. It does not say that no one can teach scientific creationism. And unfortunately, many individual teachers do. Some school districts even require equal time for creation and evolution. See, the state cannot demand equal time. Principals, you can. You can tell your teachers, I want you to teach creation. You principals have the authority to do that. You teachers can just flat do it. You don't need any special permission to teach creation. Just do it. It's like asking permission to breathe. Just breathe, okay? There's no law against it, and there's no law against teaching creation. William Provine, who believes in evolution, says, teachers and school boards in public schools are already free under the Constitution of the USA to teach about supernatural origins if they wish in their science classes. Laws can be passed in most countries of the world requiring discussion of supernatural origins in science classes and still satisfy national legal requirements. And I have a suggestion for evolutionists. Include discussions of supernatural origins in your classes and promote discussion of them in public and other schools. Come off your high horse about having only evolution taught in science classes. The exclusionism you promote is painfully self-serving and smacks of elitism. Why are you afraid of confronting the supernatural creationism believed by the majority of persons in the USA and perhaps worldwide? Good question, William. Why are people afraid of this anyway? Provine said, shouldn't students be encouraged to express their beliefs about origins in a class discussing origins by evolution? They sure should. And teachers, you should encourage your students to discuss and write papers about creation. You can use any of my material you like. Nothing I have is copyrighted. Please have at it. Impact article number 196 tells about how teachers can teach creation in the science classroom. It's perfectly fine. Not only can you teach the Bible in your class, you can teach science and creation. You can teach it straight from the Bible. A public school teacher can get up tomorrow and read Genesis to their students and say, students, let's discuss this. Here's a theory of origins. What do you think? That's perfectly fine. Now, teachers, you are not allowed to try to convert the kid to be a Baptist or Buddhist or Catholic, okay? You're not allowed to do that because you are on the state payroll. You cannot proselytize, but you can educate. And teaching a variety of theories is perfectly fine. 1963, the Bible was taken out of school, some people said. Actually, people just got afraid to teach it, and they had no need to do that. But we were deceived by the ACLU. This court said you cannot use the Bible to try to get kids saved. If you want to teach the Bible, it's perfectly fine. They didn't throw the Bible out. People took it out voluntarily. We got tricked by the ACLU. You can get more on that subject from Elizabeth Ridenour at the National Council of Bible Curriculum in North Carolina. They've helped get the Bible into public schools in 27 states. 150,000 kids now, I believe, have taken the Bible curriculum in public schools. Get a hold of her to see how that's done, okay? You might want to get the book Teaching Creation Science in Public Schools by Dwayne Gish. We can get it through our ministry out there on the back table. See, states can legally require teachers to discuss evolution. They cannot require them to discuss creation. And an awful lot of Christians have wasted an awful lot of time trying to pass laws requiring that creation be taught. You're wasting your time. It's not going to happen. Just tell the teachers you can do it. Teachers can discuss creation if they wish. Mel Gabler of Educational Research Analysts has great material on talking about creation in public schools. Gabler's actually research all the textbooks that come out. He said courts allow states to require discussing scientific weaknesses within evolution theory. Texas has a law that requires the weaknesses of evolution be presented in the textbook. But they don't follow the law, and nobody sues them for it, and they should. See, in 1963, the landmark court case said, the Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historic qualities. Nothing we said here says teaching the Bible is against the First Amendment. Basically, that was the 63 court case. In 1980, Supreme Court said you can use the Bible in your public schools if you want. In 1980, the Eighth Circuit Court said you can use the Bible because it will advance the students' knowledge of and appreciation of our religious heritage. In 1987, Supreme Court said you can teach a variety of scientific theories. It's perfectly fine to teach anything about creation in your public school. So teachers, don't be afraid, just flat do it. And if anybody gives you a hard time for it, let me know. I'll be glad to try to help if I can. California State Board of Education says discussing any scientific fact, hypothesis, or theory related to origins is appropriate for the science curriculum. Ooh, interesting. If you want to keep up on what's happening in education, you might want to get a hold of Fred. Here's his email, fredb001@spectra.net, and ask him to put you on the loop. And you will get bunches of emails every day that'll keep you up to date on the latest happening in education. Okay, what can we do? I suggest you get a hold of the biology textbooks or the textbooks that they're selecting in your area and see the ratings on them. People have rated them to see which ones are more evolutionary. In 1991, the textbooks were rated, and it was discovered that Merrill biology only had 2.9% devoted to evolution, whereas HBJ had 15.6%. See, some textbooks have more evolution than others. Now, if you're on the textbook selection committee, I suggest go through the books, pick out the least poisonous. Order that for your kids. Then do two things. Write a letter to the ones you did not pick and tell them why. If HBJ starts getting 5,000 letters from around the country saying, we did not purchase your book this year because you have too much evolution in it, well, guess what they're going to do next year? See, they stay in business because of one thing, money, right? Secondly, write a letter to the one you did pick and tell them, we picked your book because you have the least amount of evolution. However, if somebody beats you next time, we're picking them. Get the evolution out of your books. You might want to get the book Pandas and People. We sell that through our ministry, a great supplemental biology book that talks about intelligent design. It doesn't talk about God or the Bible. You might want to get this book, Icons of Evolution, if you want to get all the documentation on the 15 different icons that he chose that shows that they've been proven wrong. Go to your school board and say, look, this has been proven wrong. Here's the evidence. Take this out of the books. Get the Gablers to help you with your textbook selection. You can get their book from us. It's only $4. What are they teaching our children? By the Gablers. Mr. Gabler wrote me a letter in April 2000. He said, Dr. Hovind, thank you for using What Are They Teaching Our Children? You'll be interested to know that in our 39 years of work, we have never seen publishers so sensitive or schools so receptive to our textbook reviews and ranking. We are pleased to recommend the Harcourt Scott Forsman Elementary Science Series. They are much less dogmatic on evolution than the others we reviewed. They've already reviewed them all, folks. Get their opinion and buy the books that they recommend. And quickly, the publishers will be scared stiff of Mel Gabler because it influences their pocketbook. Hitler said, let me control the textbooks. I'll control the state. We've got a battle, folks. Some practical steps to fix the problem, and we will quit. Get some creation materials in your public libraries. We get a call or letter just about every week from somebody who gets saved watching a creation videotape from my ministry that the kid found in the public library or the public school library. Get the books in there. Get some tapes in there. You could demand they cut out the pages that have false information. That won't cost the school a dime. If you say, hey, teacher, you know, the information on this page is not correct, or go to the school board or whoever, say, I suggest this page be cut out. You're not asking to put the Bible in the schools, are you? You're asking to get the lies out of the books. How can they object to that? How many of you would help cut the pages out free of charge and bring your own scissors? See, it won't cost the school a nickel. Okay? You could glue the pages together like the principal in Georgia did. Or put a warning sticker in the front cover that says, warning, the page information on the following pages is not true. Or get the students my little brainwashed book. Pass those out on campus, see what happens. Have you been brainwashed by your science textbook? Man, that'll stir up some interesting discussions. Most states have laws requiring textbooks to be accurate. Florida has a law that says instructional material shall be accurate. And when you've got a textbook teaching the kids that the human embryo has gill slits, that's not accurate. That's 125 years out of date. Get that out of the book. Okay? Texas, almost every state that I've found the laws on this topic have laws requiring textbooks to be accurate. Wisconsin does. Alabama does. It says textbooks should be adequate and current. To show the horse evolution is not current. It's 50 years out of date. Alabama has a textbook, a sticker in the front that's supposed to have a sticker. And by the way, if you're in Alabama watching this tape and your textbooks don't have stickers in the front warning the kids about micro and macro evolution, you need to demand they put those in there. That's what the law says. Those stickers have to be in there. We can get you a copy of one of the stickers if you call my office. California Code says California textbook shall be accurate and reflect current and confirmed research. If a California textbook tells the kids the human embryo has gill slits and you got a tailbone you don't need anymore and the whale used to walk around on those little bones, that's not current. Get that stuff out of there. Okay? And again, all the documentation can be found in this book right here, Icons of Evolution. It'll give all the stuff you need to prove it's not correct. Okay. Students ought to be told you have the right to be exempt. Now, if your kid is going to a public school, and by the way, you might want to consider that whole topic, get them out, homeschool or private school if you can. But if they're going to a public school and they're being taught evolution and you don't want them taught evolution, it's very simple. We've got a book called Students' Legal Rights. You look on page 53 and it tells you what to do. You go to the school and you say, in writing, I do not want my student, fill in the name, Herman, Johnny, Sam, whatever, I do not want my student taught evolution. Sign your name. Have a witness sign it. Hand it to the principal. Do you understand? I don't want my student taught. If you don't want them taught sex ed, sign a statement saying I don't want them taught this. Period. Now the school is required to give alternative material to your students. Suppose 97% of the kids were standing in the hallway doing the alternative material. It's not going to take the teacher too long to figure out, we might as well skip this. The kids are all gone out in the hallway. If you don't know your rights, you might as well not have them, folks. Now here's some things to watch for. If a school is going to have something that is good in the school, tomorrow morning I'm speaking in a public school in Illinois. They often will have it be an opt-in program. In other words, you have to get permission signed in order to come to the good program. If they're going to have a bad program, then they make sure it is an opt-out program. Now, how many of you ever were given a note to take home to get signed and you forgot or lost the note? Yeah, just about everybody. See, they know. You need to demand a level playing field. All the programs are going to be opt-in or opt-out, but none of this mixing them up. Social engineering, which they're trying to do here. Now, don't confront your teachers publicly. Kids, if they're teaching evolution, don't confront them publicly if you can avoid it. Now, if you are late to class frequently, if you're a troublemaker or a goof-off, if you never do your homework, if you don't pay attention in class, then please don't tell them you're a Christian. Shut your mouth, okay? If a test question comes up and it says, what evidence do we have for the horse evolution? You can say, the textbook says, blah, 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 write down what you're supposed to have learned, and then you can close out by saying, however, this is not correct. Learn the material, but don't swallow it. Don't believe it, okay? You can ask to be exempt. If they're teaching you something that parents that you don't want your kids to learn, demand that they be exempt. It's your child. It's not the school's child. That's your child, okay? You can give videos to your teachers to watch. Thousands of teachers get converted to creationism by watching or reading creationist materials. The teacher is not the enemy, okay? Most of them are really good people. They just have been trained wrong, that's all. You should pray for them. Teaching public school is hard work. Pray for those folks. Get a list of them and pray for them. Invite them to a creation seminar. Have them call me with any questions. Ask your teacher to show a creation video in class. You don't need to ask permission. Just do it. Teachers, you need to learn what some of your kids learned years ago. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. Think about that one for a while. Okay? Some of you ought to run for school board. The school board decides which books you buy, you know. You could get on the curriculum committee. You could pass or enforce the laws requiring books to be accurate. Some people are afraid of what people are going to do. The Bible says the fear of man bringeth a snare. I think we need to be converting the teachers and students. Jesus didn't spend much time changing the Roman Empire. He changed individuals. That's where the battle needs to be fought. You could write letters to the editor about creation and evolution. That's what started my whole ministry. I moved to Pensacola, started writing letters to the editor, and here I am 12 years later, speaking 700 times a year on the topic of creation and evolution. Donate some creation books to your school library. Bert Wagner can help you get them in. He knows the steps to take in order to get the books in the library. Educate others. Use creation as a means of evangelism. Folks, after 30 years of studying this, I'm convinced Satan is using our own school system to destroy the next generation of kids that comes through. What are these kids being taught anyway? Boy, nice looking book. That's sharp. Feels heavy. Quality printing. Gorgeous pictures. And poison on just about every page. Man, we got a battle, folks. Some of you are more worried about who wins that dumb ball game than what your kids are being taught, aren't you? You ought to get right with God. There's a battle going on, folks. I'd encourage you to get busy and do something for God with your life. Let's all stand, bow our heads, and close our eyes, and let's pray and be dismissed. Well, thank you for watching this videotape. For those of you that joined us by video, we want to let you know that you're welcome to give us a call, and we'll try to answer any questions we can. We want to help strengthen your faith. On this tape, we talked about the age of the earth and what the Garden of Eden was like. It's interesting to learn things about dinosaurs and about creation and evolution, but it's much more important to know that you personally are going to heaven. If you've never trusted Christ as your Savior, or if you're not sure you're going to heaven, let me share with you very quickly and simply what the Bible says about how to go to heaven. You don't have to do what God says, but you at least ought to know what's going on and know what you need to do. When I was a sophomore in high school in East Peoria, Illinois, I had been raised in a variety of different churches, but I didn't know if I was going to heaven. I didn't know if I had ever trusted Christ. I wasn't saved. And a friend of mine asked me, he said, "Kent, do you know if you're going to heaven?" I said, "No, I sure don't." He said, "Well, if I could take the Bible and show you what the Bible says, would you be interested in knowing?" I said, "Yeah, I'd like to know about that." So he took his Bible and showed me 3 simple verses, and for the first time in my life, I understood what God wanted. The Bible says in the book of Romans, chapter 3, and verse number 23, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." Everybody is a sinner. My friend looked at me and said, "Kent, you are a sinner. You've done things that God doesn't like." I said, "Boy, you can say that again." And the Bible says everyone is a sinner. Now, some are worse than others in man's eyes, but in God's eyes, one sin makes you a sinner. And you're in trouble. If you've broken one of God's laws, you're guilty, you're a sinner. Now, in Romans chapter 6, in verse number 23, it tells us, "For the wages of sin is death." Of course, wages is something you earn. And wages of sin, what you have earned because of your sin is you have earned the death penalty. You deserve to die and go to hell. The problem is God doesn't want you to go to hell. So to be fair, God has to send everybody to hell because of one sin, but He decided to provide a way out. Jesus Christ came down and died on the cross to pay for your sins. And now you can accept what He did for you. So actually, His death pays for your sin. So my friend showed me the wages of sin is death. He said, "Kent, you deserve to die and go to hell." I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "But," the verse continues, "but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord." You do not get eternal life through the church. You don't get it through baptism. You don't get it through being good. You get eternal life through Jesus Christ. See, you received and we received from our parents a free gift of physical life. Somebody else did the work, went through the pain, paid all the bills, and you and I got free gift, physical life. Getting born really only takes a few minutes. Now, growing takes a long time. And getting born into God's family only takes a few minutes. Growing in God's family takes a long time and requires a lot of effort, like reading your Bible, going to church, praying, doing those things. They help you grow to be a good Christian, but they don't make you a Christian. You only become a Christian if somebody else does the work for you. If Jesus Christ comes and lives in your heart and makes you a new person. February 9th, 1969, my friend said, "Kent, you're a sinner." I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "According to the Bible, you deserve to die and go to hell." I said, "Yes, sir, I know that too." He said, "But God wants to give you a gift, eternal life. You deserve eternal death. God wants to give you eternal life." I said, "Well, how do I get it?" He said, watch this. Romans chapter 10 and verse number 13 tells us, for whosoever means anybody, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. It doesn't say you might be saved. It says you shall be saved. Anybody that receives Jesus Christ, they call on Him, they ask Him to forgive them. The Bible says in John chapter 1 that if you receive Him, you become a child of God. You become a son of God. In John chapter 3, it says you must be born again. These things all tie together. When you receive Christ as your Savior, some people use the expression, you receive Him into your heart. When you receive Jesus Christ, when you accept what He has done for you, you become a child of God. You receive the new birth. It just takes a few minutes to say, "Jesus, I'm a sinner. Would you please forgive me and save me?" And so February 9th, 1969, I bowed my head and I said, "Lord, I'm a sinner. I know you died for me on the cross. And I'd like you to forgive me. I'd like you to come live in my heart and save me and forgive me. Make a new person out of me, would you please, Lord?" I just received Christ as my Savior. And so that day became my spiritual birthday into God's family. I'm now a child of God. Have been for quite a while. And if I do something wrong, I cannot go to hell because I've received the gift of eternal life, and eternal life lasts forever. But as God's child, I can receive His punishment. See, I'm in God's family now, and it's treated very different, a family matter, if I do some sin. Whereas before, God would have been my judge. It was a legal matter if I had sinned. But now my sins are paid for. So when I tell people I'm going to heaven, it's not because I'm so good, it's because my sins are forgiven. You can have the same thing. If you'll accept Jesus Christ as your Savior right now, He'll forgive your sin and save you and take you to heaven. In this session, we talk about creation and evolution and dinosaurs and carbon dating and all those things that are interesting. But it's not going to matter if you go to hell. Please, check your heart. If you've not trusted Christ as your Savior, why don't you ask Him to save you right now? Just bow your head and pray a simple prayer like I prayed in 1969. There's no magic words. God knows what's in your heart. But if you'd like to receive Christ, why don't you pray something like this along with me? Just pray and say, "Dear Lord Jesus, I know that I'm a sinner. I believe you died for me on the cross, and I'd like to ask you to forgive me. I now receive you as my Savior. In Jesus' name, amen." Well, folks, Romans 10:13 says, "Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." If you just receive Christ, you've got God's promise. You're going to heaven, and God's promises last forever. So if you've just done that, why don't you call or write or email me and let me know. My name and address will come up on the screen, and you can get a hold of me and let me know you just received Christ as your Savior, and we can rejoice with you. Once you receive Christ, now that makes you born into God's family. That's just the beginning. Growing requires a lot of work. You're going to need to read your Bible, go to a good Bible-believing church, start telling others about Jesus, and there's all sorts of things, and I'll be glad to be a help if I can be. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoy this video series.
It's hard to describe what it's like to stand on the top of the Mount of Olives overlooking the old city of Jerusalem, or having a Bible study on the Sea of Galilee, or visiting Capernaum, where Jesus based His ministry. And imagine what it would be like to walk through the Garden of Gethsemane, pray at the Wailing Wall, or have communion at the site of the empty tomb. Israel has a rich history, And it's the only spot on the planet where God walked, talked, and taught. And from the time your feet touch Israeli soil until you leave again, you're very aware that this is God's special place on earth. For the rest of your life after you've toured this land, you'll never again read your Bible the same way. But this is more than a tour of Israel. You'll be joining 400 evangelical Christians cruising the magnificent Mediterranean Sea on the beautifully appointed cruise ship Aegean One. You travel to 4 countries and visit over 100 biblical sites using the ship as your floating hotel. You begin by flying into Athens, where you'll tour the Acropolis with the magnificent Parthenon, and Mars Hill, where Paul addressed the Greeks. From there, the New Testament will come alive as you tour stunning Ephesus, one of the best preserved New Testament sites in the world. Next, you'll stop at the Isle of Patmos to visit the actual cave that John lived in while he penned the book of Revelation. Then you'll spend a day at sea, relaxing and attending at-sea conference lectures led by Kent Hovind, America's top biblical apologist, Frank Peretti, best-selling Christian author, and other nationally known Bible teachers. The next port is Egypt, where you'll have the option of touring the Egyptian Sphinx and the incredible pyramids, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Then it's on to Israel, where you can actually walk where Jesus walked. For 3 life-impacting days, you'll tour Israel, returning to the ship each night. The first day in Israel, you'll visit the Galilee area, including Mount Carmel, where Elijah called the fire down from heaven, and where you can see the breathtaking view of the Valley of Armageddon. One of the highlights of this day is the boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. You'll also see Nazareth, the Mount of Beatitudes, and Capernaum, where Peter lived as one of Jesus' disciples. Then you'll spend 2 days visiting Jerusalem and its numerous biblical sites, including the Old City, the Wailing Wall, the Upper Room, the Pools of Bethesda, the Mount of Olives, Bethlehem, and of course you'll be served communion at the empty tomb. Each night, and while at sea, you can choose to attend any of the ship activities, Bible studies, lectures, and praise singing. You even have pre- and post-cruise options to visit Rome, Corinth, or to disembark in Israel for a few extra days before traveling to stunning Petra, Jordan, a place many believe could play a role in future Bible prophecy. There's no cruise like the Bible Lands cruise. Athens, Ephesus, Patmos, Egypt, 3 days in Israel, an apologetics conference, ship activities, Bible studies, and praise nights. What a vacation! And it's easy to hold your space so you can begin making plans to travel. To reserve your cabin, simply fill out the form on the Bible Lands Cruise brochure and mail today. We hope you can join us, as anyone will tell you that's traveled with us on any of our past cruises. This is definitely the trip of a lifetime.